majority of them are characterized by presence of political dynasties. There have already been a lot of attempts to legislate a law that is going to implement the prohibition of political dynasties, but to no avail. Okay, maybe because those politicians that are incumbent in Congress, lower and upper houses of Congress, are also a part of political dynasties. So sino ba naman ang gusto na i-limit yung participation ng kanilang family members? Of course, they don't like that. They would like all of their families, nepotism, all of their family members. We have this thing called the inheritance of public office. If your father is a mayor, then your father is going to make sure that you also get yourself into public service. But that this is not an ideal of a democratic society. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. To get involved in the reformation of the negative phases of Philippine politics, we have other negative phases. Personality politics. Succeeding resource speakers will talk more on this, okay? But this is very, very obvious. Okay, we people that are popular, like celebrities, though they are not as good, as they are supposed to be, because they are running for higher public offices, but they get there, okay, because of this culture of personality politics. Immature voters, as some people put it, some experts put it, but somehow this has developed historically. We have this what we call this meme, bobotante, traditional politicians or trapos. I think you guys are very much familiar with this. Okay, so we don't like this to prevail, as we would like to create changes so that the Philippines will be a better country, a better country, not only for us, but for the next generations. Okay, next slide. Evolution of states and governments. How this is something that maybe we can be happy of. Okay, state and governments evolve, although evolution is different. The pace of evolution is different from state to state, from country to country, and this is also because how the state evolve, influenced by the progress in knowledge, philosophy, and ideology. So culture changes, knowledge changes, our system of government also changes as time passes by. According to pewresearch.org, very popular research organization, according to their survey in 2017, the results of their survey, 57% of the countries in the world are democracies, 13% are autocracies, 28% possess both elements of democracy and autocracy. What does this imply? Okay, this implies that the trend is upward since the mid-1970s. Okay, we are gearing towards that direction of getting more and more democratic. In the case of the Philippines, we are also getting more and more democratic, as we used to be, if you're going to compare. But the challenge is still very big. We need to create further change and make the evolution much faster. Okay, so that even in our time we can experience betterment and comfort in our country. Okay, next slide. Okay, so based on prevalent political system, governments can either be democracy or authoritarianism. Democracy, okay, in your politics and governance class, no, is described as for, by, and of the people. It is from the two Greek words, which are demos, which means people, and kratos, which means authority. Okay. So the authority resides in the people. Authoritarianism is a political system that rests upon obedience than upon consent. There are still a lot of, as you have seen in the statistics that I have provided a while ago, there are still some countries that are into this. Obedience, not democratic, because people are not the sovereign, okay, in that particular state. They can be communist, one-party, military, dynastic, or theocratic. Okay. Let's move on. Next part. Next slide. All right. So along this line of development, political systems development, states and people's political consciousness also evolves along this line. We grow up, we develop our knowledge, our attitude towards politics, is changing. Yes, next slide. The Philippines, okay, according to Article 2, Section 1 of the 1987 Constitution, in as far as our political system is concerned, the Philippines is a democratic and republican state. Okay, so it must be clear to everyone that we are not living in an authoritarian state. We are not also living in a dictatorial state. Everybody has the right to express his ideas. Especially, everyone has the right to go out and participate in the process of election. This is not a privilege given to us by government officials. This is a matter of right provided for by our Constitution, the highest law of the land. Republican, because we are not a direct democracy. We elect our representatives in order for them to act and to make political decisions on our behalf. Okay? Tawag sa kanila ay mga utusan natin. Okay? They are our servants, servant leaders. But imagine, we put them into position. They're supposed to serve us. But that is not what is going on in our current political system. This is not in line with the spirit of our Constitution. So we have to empower ourselves because we are indeed the sovereign. We have to exercise our right, like the right to suffrage, because this is our tool in order to create changes. One of the biggest changes that we can create in a democratic society is through casting our votes during elections. Sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanates from them. Gone were the days, authoritarian periods, where kings would assert their rights over their subjects, where their subjects were not granted rights that kings and absolute leaders possessed. Okay, next slide. Okay, so yeah, as a democratic state, our Constitution also provides that these are the elements that must be present. Okay, election is of course, election is election is a part of a democratic society, but it doesn't guarantee that considering that there is an election that the country is already democratic, because even dictators can also implement elections, but that election may not be possessing that requirement of substantive election. Key elements. The first one is there is a political system. In the Philippines, we have that as granted for by the Constitution for choosing and replacing government officials through free and fair elections. Free because every eligible citizen has the right, 18 years old and above, to vote and run for public office. Elections must be regular, because if election is not regular, there is an indeterminate what we call that, period, okay, where government officials can hold office. Okay. One to sawa. And elections should also be fair in a democratic society. So let's try to contemplate, does the Philippines possess this kind of element or characteristic? Fair. How do we know that election is fair? First one is everyone's vote has an equal weight, rich or poor. Okay? Walang tinatangi. We are all human beings. We are all Filipino citizens. The vote of somebody who is rich is also equally valuable with the vote of those people that are poor. No intimidation and fraud. Also, they will talk further about this later. Legislated limitations on campaign finance and contributions. Rich people may have the original advantage, according to Karl Marx, but our Constitution sets forth a standard so that this original advantage by the rich can be limited, so that election will be fair. Procedural and substantive requirements of election must be met in a democratic society. Example, we would like to not necessarily to eradicate 100% poverty, but we would like people to become economically independent. Why? Because people that are poor are taken advantage of the politicians. They go to urban poor areas, okay, and they do things that are in violation of the Constitution. Okay, next slide. All right, number 2, active participation of the people as citizens in politics and civic life. Participation should not only be during elections. Not only during elections, young people. In a democratic state, we are all participants. Okay? Kings are already part, it's already part of the past, that is already obsolete during our period. King-subject relationship is already obsolete. We are partners in government. Protection of the rights of all citizens. Not only leaders have human rights like the rights of speech and the right to assemble and protest, but everyone has the right in a democratic state. President Duterte is just the president of the Philippines, but the right of Duterte to express himself is the very same right that the rest of us have. Next slide. Okay. Number 4, The ultimate sovereigns are the people. So we are the masters, but we have a very big problem on this. Okay, after the election, this one is reversed. Before the election, no, they come to us, no, shake our hands, um, talk to as many poor people as they can do. But after the election, this one is reversed. People choose their representatives through elections. The representatives are their agents and are therefore accountable to them. System of accountability, election, but must be beyond election. Power of recall. This is granted by the Constitution. Petition of 10 to 25% of registered voters. We also have the system of accountability, which we call impeachment. Congress brings charges against a high-ranking civil officials, okay, or civil officers, okay, and the Senate serves as the impeachment court. Okay, we have one president that was impeached, no, in the person of president. He was impeached in the lower house, no, but he resigned, okay, before the Senate finally decided on his case. Okay, we also have other higher ranking officials like Ombudsman Mercedes Gonzalez. She was also impeached. Okay, we also have Renato Corona, the late Renato Corona, and more. Okay, next slide. Impeachable officers, president, vice president, justices of the Supreme Court, members of the Constitutional Commission. So, but we also have, no, young people, a very big problem on this. It is very, very hard to impeach a president, okay? Because the president has a very big influence over our political system, especially, you know, a very strong political leader, you know, in the person of President Duterte. How can you do that? No, he is very popular, and he has his control, no, over majority of the members, super majority, not only majority, no, of the members of the lower house and also the upper house. Okay, next slide. We are almost done. Impeachable crimes, culpable violation of the Constitution, treason, bribery, graft and corruption, betrayal of public trust, and other high crimes. Okay, the next slide. Majority rule. Okay, the problem, no, the problem with this is we have, no, many presidents, no, that are not actually perceived by the majority. No, they were not voted by the majority. They're considered as the minority presidents. No, in a democratic society, it has to be majority. The problem is if we are going to, you know, in some other countries, the two presidents that have higher, no, candidates that have higher votes will have to be submitted again to another special election so that they can be able to gain the majority votes. But that is already very costly, and we cannot do that. Okay, but that is the ideal of democracy. Legitimacy of rulers. No, this is rulers. No, how do we know that our rulers are legitimate? No, are they really good rulers, leaders? Okay, it's the quality of being perceived to have the right to rule. The first legitimacy is electoral legitimacy. No, they were elected through free and fair election, no, free from fraud and violence. Performance legitimacy, you know, our rulers are, our leaders are performing very well, though not voted, like in the case of the People's Republic of China. Okay, the members of the Politburo were not elected, but they are doing well, so they are perceived as legitimate rulers. Okay, go next slide. God expects, no, this is the challenge for all of us. God expects us to be agents of change. Remember the thing that I have mentioned a while ago, we are all participants. the president of the Philippines is a participant in a democratic dynamics of democracy in a political system in our country. We are also as participants as he is. In any organizations, this must be the rule. Even in our family, children before were perceived mainly as subjects, during the patriarchal system, in ancient period. Okay, in most organizations, people were perceived as subjects, but because of progress in knowledge, we see ourselves as equals now in a society that is democratic, that is very much in line to the nature that was given to us by God. Change. Yeah, this is very, very, I think, interesting. According to the Bible, now we've got to be the salt of the earth. Okay, if salt is added into a dish, the dish becomes delicious, and palatable. So if we are going to become active agents of change, in the world, then we can also act as change. I'm sorry, as salt of the earth. Change will not come. Okay. I'm also going to talk about change, Dr. Aklan. No? Change will not come if we wait for some other person or if we wait for some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. So let's continue and let's pursue that road towards instigators, okay, and advocates for political and social change, not only in our country, but in the world as a whole. Okay, thank you very much for listening. Okay, I hope you have learned a lot from our topic this afternoon. So I think I am now ready to receive your questions or to address your questions.
Now we are opening the floor to questions from the audience. Please use this time to ask our speaker any questions you might have regarding the topic. Simply raise your hand through Zoom and the speaker will call on you to unmute your microphone and ask your question. Is there anyone who would like to pop up the first question? We can entertain few questions so that we can
Now,
elaborate or we can
as
explain
mentioned
further.
earlier, Sir Ibanez, as mentioned earlier, in a democratic society, there mustn't be any intimidation. So don't get intimidated. Okay, just feel free, to raise your hands, and say your question. Okay, go ahead.
If others do not want to speak in front of the camera, you can send your question through our chat and we can read the question for you so that our speaker can address and respond to your question.
We have a question here
Okay.
from Nico Ancheta. So
Okay.
the question is, how does gender affect politics?
Gender. Okay. The very good question, Nico. Okay. To tell you frankly, the Philippines is one of the most gender empowered nations in the world. Okay. Among the countries in Asia, we are the first one to have allowed our women to go out and vote in 1937. Okay. Our women are also given the right to exercise their roles relative to their gender. When we talk about gender, gender has something to do with social roles that society formulated for males and females. In Afghanistan, you're familiar with what's going on in Afghanistan. You see, women don't. A lot of women would risk their lives crossing crossing the streets, and into the airport where American planes are located, because they would like to escape from Afghanistan. One of the reasons is that gender roles in Afghanistan are very, very restricted and very, very limited. So in relation to politics, we have also that aspect of politics, which is feminism. If politics in general is evolving, feminism is also evolving. During patriarchal societies, among ancient societies, of course, people were not very much giving emphasis on the rights of women. Okay? Because societies were very patriarchal.
Sir,
Okay,
we have
but
another
now,
question, sir.
okay.
Okay,
I hope
so
I
that you can
satisfied you.
address also this one. Okay, it says, what do you think, sir, are the cons of being a democratic country? Is there a cons of being a democratic than any other
Very
type
good question.
yes, sir.
Okay, very good question. Okay, there are also weaknesses of a democratic country. Okay, one of which is the majority may if you have the control of the majority, for example, na super majority, so walang magagawa yung minority kasi majority rule. So minority may be experience some kind of bullying, some kind of exploitation by the majority. Okay, so it has to be both subscribing to the ideal values of democracy. Okay, fairness, dapat fair, not exploiting one another. But some people can take advantage of democratic processes.
Okay, there's another question, Karen. Would you like to read?
Yes. There's another question. It's, in your own opinion po, is identity politics becoming more prominent in the Philippines?
Oh, I hope not. But it is still existing, and we are combating against it. Okay. No data, but very obvious. I think it's just around the corner. It is considered as one of the challenges. Okay, COMELEC is facing, one of the challenges our political system is facing. Okay, or you can maybe ask Pacquiao and other personalities who are very popular in our political system.
Okay, sir. Well, there's a hand being raised here, which is named Asomta Cheli, which we suspect it is not her. But if we can give the chance for the person who raised his or her hand, you can speak up now so that you can address our speaker. There's one more question that we can read after that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, clearly.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. You have cited on Section 1 as Philippine as a democratic and republican state, in which the sovereignty resides in the people,
Okay.
and all the government authorities emanate from them.
Yes.
I'd like to ask if, let's say, we will allow a candidate to run for any election post, in which we know that he is a member of a political clan also, let us say, whose father and mother are into politics as well. Will it that be contrary to what we are saying in Section 1, that Philippine is democratic? So meaning if the right resides on the people, then I think dynasty is no longer an issue.
That's correct. No, it is contrary. Section 2, Article 2 is entitled the Declaration of State Policies and Principles. So it is contrary to state policy, state principle, but the Constitution requires an enabling law. The one I mentioned a while ago. We don't have a law yet, that prohibits a law that defines the scope of political dynasty law. Hanggang ano ba? Walang ganun pa. Okay? But we have the power because we are the ones that are sovereign. Okay? And we put people there as our representatives. Okay? They are the ones that are legislating laws. Okay? They are the ones that have to speak our voice. Why is it that they are not speaking our voice? If our voice is for the abolition of political dynasties in the Philippines, why are they not speaking our voice? Well, that's politics, negative side of politics in the Philippines.
Okay, sir. There are two questions talking about the same thing here.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, what can you say about federalism in a country? Do you agree about federalism Duterte is introducing to us?
Well, federalism is quite similar to devolution. Devolution. The power of the national government is devolved, given to, in the case of federalism, given to, let's say, provinces or regions. Okay, well, that is good. Okay, however, as far as I am concerned, okay, we already have our local government code, and our local government code talks about devolution already. The problem we have is not more on the structure of the government. I think it's more on something else. Okay, it's more on graft and corruption. It's more on abuse of power. No, it's more on less empowered, citizens of the country. So I think there are countries also like the United States of America. They are successful. Okay, there are also countries that are in Malaysia, federal government, but there are also countries that are not federal, but then they are also successful. Okay, maybe the thing is we can be united. We have already been united. We have been there before the Spaniards came to the Philippines. We were divided, and then we got ourselves united, and we were able to do that. So I think the problem is something else, not more on the government structure thing.
Okay, we can ask Carrie to read other questions. How many more questions do we allow?
Maybe
Sana na.
one
Sir,
more.
you're
Okay.
flooded with questions. There's even one here from my messenger, and I think he doesn't want to be identified. Just want to ask the issue. All right,
Okay.
Karen, choose your question. That I'll be reading the last question because I think we need to hear other speakers as well. They are just waiting for us again.
Okay, so there are a lot of questions, but I'll read one. So, why does the government allow people to join again, even though they've committed corruption?
Yeah, I talk about the system of accountability. Okay. I think those, if you have been convicted of a crime, okay, you have already been finally convicted, okay, with finality, which means your case has already been decided upon by the highest court, the Supreme Court of the Philippines. Well, that is going to bar you from running public office. In the case of impeachment, if somebody is impeached, so he can be what we call this. He cannot be allowed to run for public office. So I think we have a law that is in place in relation to that. Bong Revilla, Bong Revilla, there is no finality yet on his. I think he was cleared with the many cases that he was accused of. Okay, so that's it.
Okay,
It's
so
allow
I think, sir.
guilty people to run for office.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir, for that question. For the answer. Here's another one. I think this will be the last one. I'm sorry we cannot address much. There's a flood of questions, but I think our time would not suffice. But this one is another one, which is almost similar to the others, but I think this is a special request. It says here, Sir, I am a voter, and once that I voted, the ones, those people that he voted were actually very good. However, in the latter parts of their years, they end up corrupt. Then another election occurs. They say na sa daang matuwid lang, but that's obviously they make those flowery words and make me discouraged to vote. Why do we still need to vote having that kind of risk for our funds to be tampered? And some voters shoulder these problems sa mga naboto nila na corrupt. So why still vote even if the change going downwards?
You see, that's a very interesting question. All the questions actually are very challenging. Patronage politics is not only on the part of the politicians. Okay, even the voters are also what we call this. The voters have also embedded or this culture, negative culture of patronage politics has also become a part of the voters' culture. Okay, because that is the culture of the people, so you just go for it. Okay, if you will not go for it, you will not win in the election. And I talk with so many people. I ask them, why are you going to vote for this person, for this candidate? And many of them told me actually, that they are voting for that person because that person helped them. Okay, so helping, giving a reward, okay, is also one of the criteria that people have in mind in choosing a government official. That is why there is really a need of re-educating, not only our politicians, but especially our voters. That's why we have this voters education, especially young people. Okay, young people, according to Rizal, are the hope of our nation because young people are still they are still accommodating to changes. Okay.
All right. A round of applause to our first speaker who just ignited our interest about politics. And, you're flooded, sir, with a lot of questions. However, we cannot address all of them, but we will take note some of those questions. And maybe if there's a chance, I don't know if you're going to reply or respond to these questions. These are also important questions. But given the time limit, we cannot address all of them. Ladies and gentlemen, our second speaker, all right, is probably ready now. And so let us welcome Jocelyn Manansala. Josie is the overall president of the Sangguniang Kabataan Federation municipal level of Los Baños, Laguna, and the SK chairperson of Maahas Los Baños. She is a student taking up civil engineering from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, with extensive experience in the field of communication. Let's welcome Miss Josie Manansala.
Okay. Confirm ko lang po kung okay po yung audio ko po.
Yes, ma'am. Naririnig po namin.
So, good afternoon everyone. So, thank you po sa lahat ng nag-invite sa akin to be part of this webinar for voters education. And I was assigned to discuss Philippine political landscape. So, before everything else, check ko lang din po kung okay po yung share screen. Okay po ba? Yung presentation po ba ay okay? Thank you. So today I will be discussing Philippine political landscape. So first of all, introduce ko po muna yung sarili ko po. So before entering politics, I'm a student po of civil engineering in UPLB. I joined multiple pageants in the year 2016 and 2017. So somehow nakilala po ako dito sa aming lugar, sa Los Baños, and run for the position of SK chairperson in a barangay here in Los Baños. And decided to run for the SK Federation president in Los Baños, Laguna And I was also elected as the SK Federation Treasurer in the provincial level here in Laguna. So I was elected in 2018 and hanggang ngayon po ay nakaupo pa rin kami. So expected po namin na matatapos yung term namin kasi po technically ay barangay official and expected po na matatapos ang term namin by December 2022 nagkaroon po ng election. So to start my discussion, political landscape here in the Philippines. So, ang Philippine government natin is form ng ating government is Republican with presidential form. So usually the power is equally divided into 3 branches. So the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. So let us thoroughly discuss the 3 branches of our government. So the Republic of the Philippines, again, meron po tayong legislative, executive, and judicial. So under legislative po, sa national government, meron po tayong dalawang main components. So the upper house and the lower house. So the upper house is, mas kilala natin sila bilang Senado or the Senate. And the lower house is the House of Representatives. So sa executive naman po, we have the President of the Philippines, the Vice President of the Philippines, and of course, our cabinet members. Lastly, sa Judicial Branch po ay ang ating Supreme Court. So let us analyze or discuss yung 3 major branches of the Philippine government. Legislative branch. So ano ba ang purpose ng ating mga legislators? So first, they are the lawmakers. So they have the power to make, to amend, or to repeal laws. Sila ay legislators. They have the power to allow They have the power to allow or reject presidential appointments. So they have the power to declare war.
Please unmute. Thank you.
So the first component of the legislative branch is the Senate. So sa Senado, meron tayong 24 elected senators. So every 3 years, nagkakaroon tayo ng national election and we elect 12 senators per election. And each senator is entitled to a 6-year term. So the presiding officer is called the Senate President and they are elected within the Senate body. So sa ngayon po, ang atin pong Senate President ay si Senator Vicente Soto III or mas kilala natin siya bilang si Senator Tito Soto. So among the 24 incumbent senators, we must at least know the half of them. Kasi usually nga, we elect 12 every national election. So sa darating na 2022 elections, ito yung mga senators na matatapos yung term. So one of them I see, dito sa picture you can identify them. So if you do not know or you are not familiar with our senators, mahalaga na kilala natin sila kasi they are the lawmakers. So sila Laila de Lima, Senator Franklin Drilon, Senator Win Gatchalian, Senator Richard Gordon, Senator Risa Ontiveros, Senator Panfilo Lacson, Senator Manny Pacquiao, Senator Francis Pangilinan, Senator Ralph Recto, si Tito Sen, Senator Joel Villanueva, and Senator Miguel Zubiri. So lahat sila ay matatapos yung term this May 2022 and some of them are pwede pang tumakbo for their second term. The other branch is the House of Representatives. So kung hindi kayo familiar sa House of Representatives, sila yung mga tinatawag nating mga congressman natin. Congressman, congresswoman, sila pala yun. So, House of Representatives, wala pong definite number kung ilan ang ating representatives. Pero sa ngayon, ang estimated po ay about 250 ang nakaupo. So, every 3 years naman po sila, representatives are elected from different legislative districts in the provinces and through a party list system. So, the presiding officer is called the House Speaker, who is being elected then by all of the representatives. So let me discuss first the representatives being elected in different legislative districts in the provinces. Let's say ako po, dito po sa Laguna, we have 4 distinct districts and we have 3 or 4 lone cities. So pag lone city, at meron din silang isang representative sa House. Pag naman po district, we also elect 1 representative sa House. And the other one naman po, ang representatives are elected from or through a party list system. I myself, ako po mismo ay nalito noon sa konsepto na ano ba yung party list system? Bakit tayo may nakikitang let's say Kabataan Party List, Duterte Youth Party List, Murang Oriente Party List. So anong meron sa party list? So ang mga party list na ito pala ay umuupo sa House of Representatives. So let's say a party list has gained at least 2% of the total votes in that election. So they are entitled to a 1 seat in the House. And every party list is entitled to a maximum of 3 seats. So pwedeng 2% lang yung na-hit, meron tayong isang representative ng party list sa House. Kung sakali naman na masyadong mataas yung na-gain na vote, and they are entitled to a maximum of 3 seats sa House. So, ganun nag-work ang party list system. So, walang limit as long as they hit the 2% of the total votes. So, sa ngayon, ang presiding officer natin ay si House Speaker Lord Velasco. And kung matatandaan nyo, they had a term sharing with Congressman Alan Peter Cayetano before, and natapos na yung first 1.5 year niya. So ang nag-take over na po ay si Lord Alan Velasco. So this is the House, the lower house. Now, the executive branch. So, tapos na po yung una, yung legislative. Sunod po ay yung executive branch. So, sa executive branch, ang purpose nila ay they are the executors. They have the power to carry out and enforce the law. Aside from that, they are the bureaucrats. They have the power to conduct diplomacy with other nations, and they have the power to negotiate treaties with other nations. So, unang component po ng executive branch ay ang ating chief executive, ang ating pong Pangulo ng Pilipinas, si President Rodrigo Duterte. Siya po ang ulo ng ating estado. Siya ang commander-in-chief ng lahat ng armed force natin dito sa Pilipinas. So, PNP, Navy, AFP, and Marine. So, the president is being elected by direct popular votes and serve a 6-year term and cannot be re-elected. Sunod po sa executive branch natin ay si Vice Presidente po natin. So, si Vice President, main purpose po niya ay to support the President and to take over if the President is unable to serve. So, kagaya po ng Presidente, ang Vice Presidente po ay na-elect din by direct popular votes and to serve a 6-year term and cannot be re-elected. The Vice President can be re-elected once. So, Vice Presidents are entitled to 2 consecutive terms. Aside from that, the Vice President also sits in the Cabinet. Who are the Cabinet members? So, the Cabinet serve as the counsel to the President. So, sila po ang ulo ng mga departamento natin. And Department of Health, Department of yung mga Department of Labor and Employment, and such. So, yun nga po, supposedly, ang Vice President po ay kasama ng kabinete. Pero sa ano po natin ngayon, sa estado po natin ngayon, si Vice Lenny was stripped the power to be in the cabinet members. So members are appointed by the President and being confirmed by the Commission of Appointments. Lastly po, ang Judicial Branch. So, Judicial Branch, so main purpose naman po at main trabaho po ng Judicial Branch ay to enforce the law. So, they interpret the laws, applies the laws, and decide if laws violates the Constitution. They also settle issues involving rights of individuals or group which are legally demandable and enforceable. They also examine kung nagkakaroon po ba ng abuso or abuse sa powers, kung nagkakaroon po ba ng abuse sa discretion po ng jurisdiction natin. So, ang sangay po ng Judicial Branch, Supreme Court, ang ating pong Korte Suprema. So, the Supreme Court is the highest tribunal in the Philippines. It has the power of judicial review, power to declare a treaty, international or executive agreements, laws, orders, and or presidential decrees. The Chief Justice is being appointed by the President. So, ang ating Chief Justice po ngayon ay si Chief Justice Alexander Esmundo. So, it's very important that we know or we are particular with these people na nandito sa 3 major branches of our government. So, yung diniscuss ko kanina is the national government. So, what about the local government? I reviewed po the data ng mga nag-register sa atin today as our audience. And I have seen na ang karamihan po ay within the range ng kabataan po. So, 18 years old to 25, yung majority. So, i-share ko lang po na during my, say, 18 years old po ako, I'm not really familiar with the local government units. Mas familiar lang ako sa national. And I was not able to explore local government unit, our local government unit, hanggang nung nagkaisip na lang ako and I really, when I entered college na po. So, I think ito yung isang nagiging struggle ng isang kabataan ngayon na mas marami lang tayong knowledge sa national government, which is the local government within our area or sa kung saang area tayo na nagbe-belong is as important as the national government. Kasi sila yung number 1 na mas kailangang mag-address sa needs natin as a citizen. So let's discuss the local government unit. I don't know sa iba po, pero sa akin, on my experience, this was not taught in the basic education curriculum in high school. I had to find out about this myself by asking questions to my family, to my parents, and to my colleagues na rin po as I entered the politics last 2018. So the local government units are the political subdivisions of nation. So it particularly addresses the needs of the locality depending on its geographic location, number of population, etc. So LGU in the Philippines has 3 levels. So first is the province, next is the cities and municipalities, and then down to barangays. So ang punong ahensya po na nangangasiwa sa lahat ng activities ng LGUs ay ang DILG or the Department of Interior and Local Government. So let us discuss the provincial government. So ang provincial government po ay nahati sa dalawang sangay naman, ang executive and legislative. Ang executive po ay nasa katauhan po, chief executive po ay nasa katauhan ni governor. Kung sa national government, ang purpose po ni Vice President is to support and to substitute by the President in case na hindi kayang mag-lead. Sa mga LGU po, iba ang nagiging papel ng mga vice. So, sa legislation, ang umuupo po na presiding officer ay ang mga vice governor. And presiding officer po siya ng mga na-elect din na board members. So as you can see, there are group of board members in every province. So ang nagiging representation po ng board members ay per district. And as far as I know, there are 3 representatives per district po na umuupo as board members. Sila po ang legislative body sa probinsya. So, sa legislation, sila ay gumagawa ng mga ordinansa, ng mga batas, mga order, nagbubura ng mga batas. May nag-raise ng hand. Yung questions pa, entertain natin after the discussion. Okay. So, next po ay city and municipal government. So, ulitin ko po, nahati sa 3 ang LGU. Pinakataas po natin ay ang provincial, sunod ay mga municipal. Ganun din po, nagkaroon po tayo ng executive and legislative branch. Ang chief executive naman po sa mga city and municipality ay sa katauhan po ni mayor. So, kagaya po ng sa probinsya, ang role po ng presiding officer sa legislation po ay sa katauhan naman po ni vice mayor. And ang pinapangasiwaan po niya ay ang mga municipal councilor o yung mga tinatawag natin mga konsehal. So group na po siya and they are elected hindi po per barangay. So municipal-wide or city-wide po ang nagiging election po ng mga councilor. Next po, smallest unit of government in our country is the barangay. Ganun din po, may executive, tsaka po may legislative. So, si executive po ay kinakatawan po ni chairperson o mas familiar tayo sa tawag na kapitan, kay Kap. And then, siya po ang sisilbing presiding officer na rin ng council. So, si barangay council, yung mga kagawad natin na tinatawag. So, within barangay. Aside from that, si chairperson po ay nag-supervise din sa youth council or dun sa mas kilala nating mga SK, mga sangguniang kabataan. Aside from that, meron pa po tayo mga kailangan na maging knowledge pagdating po sa political landscape ng ating bansa. So meron tayong mga tinatawag na mga ex officio members. So the literal meaning of the ex officio is from the office and is intended as by the right of office. So ang role ng ex officio members is they take part, they become member of a body by holding another office. So kagaya po nung sa akin, as I've said kanina, technically, ako po ay barangay officer because I ran in the position of SK chairperson in our barangay. And then I ran as SK Federation President in the municipality of Los Baños, and hence I'm an ex officio member of the Municipal Council of Los Baños. So to further give a description or para po mas maintindihan po nung iba kasi po this is not a common knowledge to everyone. So si SK chairperson po na na-elect, automatic po siya ay ex officio or nagiging barangay member po ng sangguniang barangay or ng barangay council. So lahat po ng SK chairperson within the municipality ay mag-e-elect po ng president nila. So sa case ko po, ako po yung na-elect sa municipal level namin. So I became the SK Federation president in Los Baños. And dahil po doon, umuupo rin po ako bilang parang konsehal ng aming bayan. So, meron akong equal vote and equal count sa council namin kahit po ako ay na-elect as SK Federation President lamang. And ang Los Baños po ay isa lang sa 30 cities and municipalities in Laguna. So, within our province, mag-e-elect din po kami ng isa pang president. And that president will be an ex officio board member naman sa provincial level. Okay. So, sa SK part, ganito po. Ngayon, meron pa pong isa. Mga kapitan naman po. Lahat po, automatic ng barangay chairpersons ay member po ng ABC na tinatawag or the Association of Barangay Captains. So, within the municipality, ganun po ulit, or within the city, mag-e-elect po ng isang president. So, si ABC president, automatic din po ay ex officio member ng council or municipal city or municipal council. And within the province, mag-e-elect po ulit ng isang presidente, and that ABC president will automatically be a member or be an ex officio member of the board member in the provincial level. Aside from that po, meron din tayong city and municipal councilors. So, sa lahat po within the jurisdiction in the province level, mag-e-elect din po tayo ng president ng municipal and city councilors. And yung na-elect po natin ay sila po ang nagiging PCL or Philippine Councilors League ng provincial chapter. Silang nagiging president and automatic nagiging ex officio board member ng provincial level sila. So kung makikita nyo, it's all about representation. Ano po? So magsisimula sa barangay na mag-aakyat sa municipal level and then aakyat po sa provincial level. So how do these people get in those positions? Sabi nga po kanina, nabanggit po ni Dr. Jess, Philippines is a democratic state. Its people have the power to choose the governing officials. So we choose by voting. So, bigyan po tayo ng unting brief about the history of election. So, noon po, ang may mga karapatan lang po na bumoto ay ang mga lalaki. So, kanina may nakita po ako nagtanong na parang how does gender affects the Philippine politics. So, dati po, lalaki lang ang may karapatang bumoto. Kasi kailangan 23 years old and above ka. So, kung lalaki lang ang makaboto, mawala ng representation ang mga kababaihan. So, expect natin na ang policies natin nakahilis sa mga kalalakihan. So, ito yung main reason kung bakit namula tayo sa isang patriarchal na setup dito sa bansa. Aside from that, so ayun po, kailangan residente ng municipality where they vote for a period of 6 months immediately preceding the election. And dapat ay marunong magsalita ng Ingles o Espanyol, dapat ay may ari-arian, or dapat ay nakaupo na rin sa local government position prior to the occupation in the country. So ganito po ay yung 1901. So, nagkaroon ng mga pagbabago. So, jump na tayo sa elections in the Philippine democracy. So, noong time ng 1946 or post-war to 1971, the Philippine politics was dominated by two parties. So, the Nationalista and the Liberal. So, the Nationalista Party dominated the senatorial positions in 1965, 1967, and 1969. So, kung mapapansin natin, if we are familiar with our history, itong mga panahon na ito ay during the Marcos era. So, if I'm not mistaken, President Marcos was elected in 1965 and he was re-elected in 1969. So, after the Plaza Miranda bombing, so nagkaroon ng parang pagbabago. Kung dati ay na-dominate ng nationalista kung saan kabilang si President Marcos, ang nangyari po ay parang ang naging LP na ang nagdo-dominate sa senatorial race lalo noong 1971. And then, martial law was declared in September 1972 and abolished the Congress. So, ang ating pong bansa ay naging nasa ilalim ng isang authoritarian at diktador. So, para po sa kaalaman ng lahat, during Marcos time po na-introduce ang write-in system or the ballot system na pinalitan ng block voting system. So, dati kasi po parang by group ang nagiging pagpili ng mga uupo. So, ngayon po ay na-introduce na nga ang write-in system or the ballot system. Ang cons nito ay magastos siya for politicians because they have to hire watchers. So ngayon, kung naririnig nyo pa rin yung term na watchers, so ito ay nagsimula nung Marcos era kasi nga they have to look at magbantay dun sa mga boto. At para masiguro na ang binabasa, kasi mano-mano pa noon, ang binabasa ay yung sa pangalan mo. And para masiguro na yung boto para sa iyo ay nakakount. During that time then, Marcos institutionalized the one-party dominance known as the Kilusang Bagong Lipunan or the KBL. So the KBL is composed of political personalities who are supportive of Marcos' authoritarian regime. During din po ng panahon ni Marcos ay na-introduce ang barangay elections noong 1982. Kasi po, kung familiar kayo sa mga ibang lugar, may mga baryo kung tawagin. So, ganun po ang voting system before. And napalitan nga po into barangay year 1972 as the basic unit of the local government. In 1985, a snap election was called by Marcos after the assassination of opposition leader Ninoy Aquino last August 1983. So, kahapon we celebrated his that anniversary. So, sa snap election, siya ay nanalo and yung pagkapanalo niya ay nag-trigger ng military coup because masyado ng lantaran yung pandadaya ng Marcos administration for him to remain in position. And the military coup empowered also the EDSA people power. Marcos was outed in February 1986 and President Cory Aquino took over the presidential position. So the authoritarian regime was dismantled and finally the 1987 Constitution was authored. So mas brief discussion po dun sa kaninang didiscuss ko sa political landscape ng Pilipinas. So the 1987 Constitution, again, the president is to be elected by direct vote of the people nationwide and is eligible only for a 6-year term. Vice President on the other hand is elected by the direct vote din, pero eligible naman po siya sa 2 consecutive 6-year term naman. Next is the senators, the senators. So during election, 12 out of 12 senators are elected by a direct vote of people nationwide and is eligible of 2 consecutive 6-year terms also. Next is the representatives or yung mga congressman, congresswoman, party list representatives. So they are elected from single-member districts and lone cities. They are also elected through a party list system, which was discussed a while ago, and they are eligible of 3 consecutive 3-year terms only. So the Local Government Code of 1991 naman is especially authored to the local government units. So sa provincial level and sa city level, also sa barangay level. So local elections take place simultaneously with the national election. So next year na election, iboboto natin ay Pangulo, Vice-Pangulo, mga senador, mga congressman, mga mayor, vice mayor, konsehal. So the officials are elected by the people within specific area of jurisdiction only. So ito po yung sinasabi kanina na kung taga Laguna ka, dun ka lang sa area of jurisdiction mo pipili. So bukod yung pagpili or pag-elect ng national position to local government position. So yun nga po, sa nasabi kanina, every official is eligible of 3 consecutive 3-year terms only. Sa barangay level naman po, medyo kakaiba ang setup. Ano po? So sa barangay level, we have the barangay chairperson, sa barangay councilors, and also the Sangguniang Kabataan Council. Pero meron po kasing na form na batas na rin na nag-cater ng special needs ng SK. So i-discuss natin siya ng bukod po. Pero under local government code po, sa barangay level, we elect the barangay chairperson and barangay councilors. So, ang nasabi ko po kanina, sa national election, nag-e-elect po tayo hanggang mga city and municipal councilors. So, kaiba naman po ang setup sa barangay. Usually, ang barangay po ay hindi kasabay ng national elections. Kagaya po nung sa amin, 2018 po kami nagkaroon ng election and supposedly 2020 po ay magkakaroon ulit ng barangay elections. But nagkaroon po ng postponement, so na-move po ng December 2022 yung barangay election kasi po kung titingnan ang mangyayari, May 2018 nagkaroon ng barangay elections, May 2019 nagkaroon ng national elections, and May 2020 supposedly ay may barangay elections. And it's masyado pong magastos para po sa ating bansa na magkaroon ng 3 consecutive years na election. So nagkaroon po ng adjustment and na-postpone ang election to barangay election to December 2022. So officials are elected by the people within specific area of jurisdiction only. Every official is eligible of 3 consecutive 3-year terms only. So kaso nga po, ang nangyayari, since barangay election po yung pinakamadaling magkaroon ng changes po sa lahat. So ang mangyayari po sa amin, ang term ko na po ay aabot po ng 4.5 years. The SK Reform Act of 2015 or the RA 10742, ito po yung nag-cater sa special needs po ng SK. So dati po 15 to 17 years old ang mga na-elect na SK officials. Kaso po nagkakaroon ng issue and nawala ang SK for 1 whole term ng barangay. At doon po sa pagkakawala niya, nagkaroon po ng mga reforma dahil syempre ang tingin po sa SK noon, doon nagsisimula ang political dynasty. Aside from that, masyado pang bata daw ang mga umuupo bilang SK and they are very easy to manipulated easily manipulated by the supervisor. So, supervisor sila kapitan, sila mayor. That's why nagkaroon po ng SK Reform Act of 10742. So, ang nangyari po, dati na 15 to 17 years old, ang SK officials po na na-elect ngayon ay 18 to 24 years old na po. So, liable na. Kung may mga mawalang pera, kahit halagang 5 pesos, kailangan na pong ikowa. So, yung 18-24, pwede nang makulong. And responsible na sa lahat po. Aside from that, inihiwalay na po ang pagiging council niya. So, dati po kung direct supervisor po ng SK ay ang kapitan. Ngayon po, si SK chairperson na po ang pangunahing supervisor ng council. And ang nangyayari po, ang mga programa po ng SK ay dumadaan na lang kay kapitan para po para ma-FYI na lang. Pero dati na pag may gantong programa si SK, ayaw ni Cap, hindi pwede. Ngayon po, hindi na ganun. So, totally nakahiwalay po ang SK. And ang mga bumoboto po sa SK officers within the barangay ay hanggang 30 years old, 18 to 30 years old po ng barangay population. So, SK elections take place simultaneously with barangay elections. How to become a registered voter? Kasi po, ngayon alam na natin na may LGU pala. So, sabi ko nga sa inyo, noon, nung naging rehistrado akong botante, excited lang po ako kasi aabutan ko nun yung presidential election. Pero pagdating ko dun sa baba na, tapos na ako sa senators, pagdating ko sa governor, hindi ko kilala kung sinong governor, sinong tumatakbong vice governor, sinong tumatakbong mga board member, at ano yung role nila. Okay, so ngayon na ganito, may mga webinar and may mga information drive. So, I hope this will encourage more, especially ng listeners natin, ng ating audience today, to encourage you all to register. Kasi hindi lang tumitigil sa senators and congressmen and congresswomen ang ating pagboto. Down to barangay officials, tayo ang nagluluklok sa kanila. So, how to be a registered voter, you must be a Filipino citizen. So, you must be at least 18 years old on the day of election. So, ngayon, kung 17 ka pa lang, pero usually May 13, 14, 15 ng election, on the day of election, 18 ka, you are eligible to vote. You must have at least one or I think 2 IDs with recent photos, and merong ibang bayan, ibang lugar na nag-offer ng online registration dahil sa ano natin yan, nasa pandemic tayo ngayon. Pero merong ibang bayan din na walk-ins lang po. So, kung meron man, kung available sa inyo ang online registration to become a voter, so, i-search nyo lang, kahit Google nyo lang na online reg, vote. Lalabas na yung unang result ng COMELEC dun sa registration nila. So, ang deadline po, at alam po, nag-announce na po ang COMELEC within last week na wala pong magiging extension for the registration. So, the last day will be on September 30. So, more than a month na lang po ang meron yung mga hindi pa registered. So, nakita ko doon sa data ng mga nag-register for today, parang 1/3 ay hindi pa po rehistrado. Pero they are willing to register. So, what's stopping you now? So, dapat wala. Kasi kahit nasa bahay tayo, accessible yung COMELEC. So, nakita ko rin nga po na, yun nga, nasabi ko kanina, na dami, dominated tayo ngayon ng audience na mga bagets. So, you should acknowledge why your vote is important. So, una, voting is a right. So, sabi kanina, Article 2, Section 1 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, the Philippines is a democratic and republican state. Sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanates from them. And Article 5, Section 1 states that the suffrage may be exercised by all citizens of the Philippines, not otherwise disqualified by the law. So, ang pagboto ay karapatan. Ang boto ng isang pilay ay katumbas lang ng boto ng isang buong tao. Ang boto ng isang 60 years old ay katumbas lang din ng boto ng isang 18 years old. So, we are entitled of equal votes. So, sobrang mahalaga na i-practice natin yung right natin to vote, lalo pagdating natin ng 18 years old. Ako noon, naalala ko, excited ako noon na mag-register kasi magkakaroon din ako ng valid ID. Pero yung time namin kasi 2015, yun yung time na tumigil na pala yung COMELEC sa pagre-release ng ID. Pero aside from that, nakaboto ako ng national election, nakapag-elect ako ng president, vice president, senators. Kaso yun nga, to my realizations, hindi ko kilala yung mga governor, vice governor, and also ngayon may chance tayo to know and to research kung sino ba yung mga personalities na tumatakbo sa probinsya din natin. So kasi ganun ka-importante din ang local government. Kasi importante rin siya sa pag-elect ng mga national government officials. Aside from voting is a right, you should register and vote because of the substantive representation of you. So, clearly, meron pong malaking difference between the young people and adult people's outlook pagdating po sa political interest. And the voters' turnout will always affect the nature of representation and ultimately the content of public policies. So sinabi ko nga sa inyo, it's all about representation. Kung ina-expect nyo na let's say, ang mga nanalong senador ay lahat lalaki, siguro mahihirapan tayong mag-cater or maggawa ng mga policy na mag-a-address sa needs ng mga kababaihan. Kasi nga, hindi okay yung representation. So everyone, even the young people, is expected to follow laws and policies. So if young people will not exercise their right to vote, their specific interests are more likely be ignored and or neglected by our policy makers. So sobrang halaga po ng representation pagdating po sa laws and policy making. Aside from that, voter turnout may affect the ideology of the next generation. So, sa panahon kasi namin, ang ideology noon ay, ang election ay pang matanda lang, pang mga tito at tita, pang nanay lang, gano'n. Pero no, election is not for old people only. So, the youth should practice their right to vote to develop the habit of voting, and thus the next generations will follow. Kung magiging kasama siya sa nakatanim sa atin na role na pag 18 na ako, kailangan ko na rin bumoto. Mapapasa siya sa next generations. So, ang tendency, tataas yung voter turnout on the age group ng mga kabataan. Kasi magiging habit na nga ang pagboto. Aside from that, you should register and vote because young people are influential. So young people are more critical on the state of the country or even in our local area only. Aside from that, the data and facts are available everywhere to young people. And tayo yung mas nag-a-access sa data and news of current events. Also, it's very easy for other youth, or kunyari, isang group of youth, to influence other youth. Madaling ma-imply ang ating mga point of views, madaling ma-influensyahan yung mga kapwa nating kabataan, lalo na sa political stance natin. At sa ibang setup, napapansin ko, dito sa household namin po ay ganito, although sa iba siguro ay hindi. May times na yung mga kabataan na o yung mga bata sa household, sila na yung nag-e-educate sa mga magulang nila na ganito daw yan kasi nabasa ko sa ganito, ganyan. Kasi usually yung parents natin, wala nang time for that information na. Tayo na yung may access sa ganong information. And ang nangyayari, tayo na yung nagiging nag-update and nag-educate sa parents natin. And we are very influential kasi mas madali silang makonvince, lalo if we are presenting them sources kung saan natin nakukuha yung facts. And lastly, political involvement of the youth strengthens democracy. So we cannot actually claim na our country is democratic nga if the data on the age group of voters turnout is always outnumbered by the adults. So, sasabihin mo ba demokratiko kung ang mga nagde-decide lang naman ay yung mga 25 and up, 30s and up. So, the people in the position says a lot about the voters turnout. Kapag nakita nyo na may mga babaeng nakaupo sa council nyo, kahit sa local council, ibig sabihin, nag-i-imply yun na marami din yung mga bumoboto na babae. Kasi sino ba naman ang mga kababaihan na ayaw ma-represent sa council, kahit sa pinakamababang council. So, again, yung mga nakaupo, says a lot kung sino ang mga bumoboto. So, voting is the new cool. So, your knowledge, opinions, and representation should materialize by voting. And to remind you all, you have exactly 39 days left to register. So, thank you so much for listening, and I believe we have time to entertain some questions.
And thank you po, Ms. Josie, for the insights you have imparted to us about the Philippine political landscape. Thank you for emphasizing the right to vote even for us young people. So let's open the floor to questions. If you have any questions related to the topic, please don't hesitate to ask them. Simply raise your hand or even send through the chat box. And we'll call on you to unmute your microphone. Okay, we have a question here. We will limit our questions to 2 questions for this speaker. And we have a question from Miko Ancheta. Good afternoon po. Ang tanong ko po, bakit po si Ginang Aquino ang naupong Pangulo after napatalsik si Marcos? Bakit hindi po ang Prime Ministry ang nag-lead? E di parang unconstitutional po ang pagka-president ni Aquino. In the chat po.
Okay. So, according to my readings nga, kasi nag-review din ako before reporting. So, si President Cory Aquino yung nakalaban po ni Marcos during the snap election. So, nagkaroon po ng coup, military coup. And I think nung na-oust po si President Marcos, yung kanyang nakalaban na si President Cory Aquino, yung umupo na president. I think. So correct me if I'm wrong po. Then ano po, wala pa po ako sa mundong ibabaw during martial law.
Okay. Sir Jed, do you want to read another question?
Okay. There are 2 questions. Siguro i-combine na lang natin so that our speaker can address both of them, because this will be the 2 last questions that we can give them, and then we'll give a chance again for the next 2 reporters. The first one is, why do you think lead the martial law? I don't know if that maybe.
What do you think?
Maybe what? Now, what do you think led to the martial law, and may possibility ba na magbago ang landscape ng Philippine politics in the future in terms of offices? Okay.
Okay, dun po muna tayo sa what do you think lead the martial law? So, I think nagkaroon nga po kasi ng abuse of power na po on the side of President Marcos, and na-re-elect siya on his terms, and nagkaroon na ng harassment sa local or sa mga Filipino. At napakita na nga po nung nagkaroon ng mga sumunod na eleksyon, as I've said in my presentation before, na na-overpower na po yung previously party, nationalista party ni Marcos. And it is a threat on his position. So, kung may threat sa position and he wants to stay in his position, he will do something, and ang ginawa niya, he declared martial law to stay in the position for more than a decade pa, I believe. 1972 na declare ang martial law and nakaupo siya until 1986. Yun po. And the last question po is, pwede ko bang i-address po yung how would the religion affect our future presidency and governance? Na-take note ko po ito kasi may question din ito kanina na how does religion affect politics? Okay. So ko lang po i-discuss na sa totoong buhay po, meron po tayong separation of church and state. So, kaso po, since we are addressing the, ano po ba, ang Pilipinas po kasi ay nadodominate po ng Christian people, ng Christian groups. Na dapat ay, sa totoong buhay nga po, hindi dapat affected, lalo sa paggawa ng mga polisiya. Kaso po, nagiging affected po, halimbawa, isama na natin, magbigay tayo ng example sa paggawa po ng policy making, halimbawa ang batas na pinopropose po ay ang pag-legalize po ng divorce. Yun na lang po, simple divorce. So sa atin po, imbis na madali ang proseso sa pagpasa ng batas, ang nangyayari ay nagkakaroon ng interference ng religious groups dahil hindi ito hindi ito nakalinya sa doktrina or sa kung ano ang tinuturo sa religion. Pero we have to really address na hindi naman po lahat tayo ay nakakabilang or kabilang sa iisang religious group. Pero ang lahat tayo na ang something in common nating lahat ay lahat tayo ay Filipino. So we have to address muna ang needs natin as Filipino before our beliefs. Napakahirap i-imply ng belief ng isa, religious belief ng isa, sa religious belief ng kapwa. Lalo kung magkaiba naman tayo ng mga dinadanas sa buhay. So, sobrang malaking impact po ang religion sa pagpili ng hindi lang presidente So, sa politika or sa government in general, lalo na sa policy making. Kaso, ang policies we have to really make policies to make our state peaceful and all, and to address the needs of our constituents. Pero nagkakaroon nga po ng interference due to religion.
Yeah.
So aside from that po, may religious groups din na nagkakaroon or nagpo-promote ng block voting. So I'm not saying I'm against the idea of block voting, pero it strips someone or it strips an individual to vote kung sino yung sa tingin niyang mas gusto just because they belong to a religious group. So it really affects the government here in our country.
Alright. Maraming salamat sa ating speaker, si Ms. Josie Manansala. To tell you, ma'am, there are other questions here, but I think we are only limited with the time. And so while we are going to play an intermission rendition or music, I think others can visit quickly the restroom to ease themselves. And if there are very, very important questions, then maybe before we start with the next sets of speakers, then we can entertain them. Okay? There are other questions here that are pertinent. So for the meantime, we are going to have the musical rendition or presentation or an intermission number while everyone is taking a break for about 3 to 5 minutes.
Thank you so much po.
What is your primary dream for your children's future? What is your plan, young man? Young woman? To have a comfortable life because of a stable job or livelihood? Do you also dream for a healthy and happy family? Is growing a strong relationship with God part of that dream? Of using the best of your abilities, not only by being a blessing to your family, but also in serving others? How do you make those dreams come true? The answer could be an education from the Adventist University of the Philippines. How does one decide what is the best school? Is it the cost, distance from home, social status of the school and its students? One of the most commonly considered indicators of quality education when employers decide among applicants for a job is the performance of the graduates in the national licensure examinations. The passing rates of AUP programs are consistently higher than the national passing rate. The government recognized the continuing excellence or role in the national development of the teacher education and business administration in AUP. And it is not just in one or two professional programs where the excellence of the AUP education is nationally recognized. From preschool to graduate school, the Federation of Accrediting Agencies of the Philippines granted AUP the institutional accreditation recognition. This means the entire institution, the degrees offered by AUP, with its facilities, services, and faculty were rated as top quality. The Commission on Higher Education also granted the university with an autonomous status, indicating the highest recognition because of the AUP's commitment to excellence and institutional sustainability. Studying in AUP not only means a good professional preparation, but also greater chances of developing a healthy lifestyle. Fresh air on a wide campus, walking to classes, healthy food, quiet surroundings, exercising in the outdoors, a regular schedule of sleeping and waking up all develop a healthy body to support a sound mind. Even the limited number of times a student is allowed to go out of the campus helps a student focus on studies. An important part of an AUP education is the hours where all students are required to work in the farm, grounds, or offices, which develops the mind and body and strengthens the spirit of service. AUP education gives equal emphasis to social development, recognizing that youth is an ideal time to build lifelong relationships. Dormitory life, where one learns to relate with roommates coming from different backgrounds and cultures. Membership in many organizations and groups prepare the students for professional and family life, where strong interpersonal skills would be more important than technical know-how. The network of friendships developed in college would support graduates for the rest of their lives. Most important are the opportunities provided in AUP for students to spiritually grow. Morning and evening dorm worships, regular church services, small groups, and religious organizations are all part of the university experience in AUP. Weeks of prayer every semester remind students about their relationship with God and the meaning of life. The many ministry and mission groups help students find meaning in the greatest joy of all, helping and serving others. Spiritual growth is even part of the professional curriculum, with the required Bible courses that focus on discipleship and ministry. A mission course in each degree prepares students for integrating Christian service in their profession. Some say that going to school in AUP is only for the rich. Compared to other universities with comparable academic recognition, tuition and fees in AUP are still cheaper. True, the cost of the dorm and the food would be more than a student studying near the family home. But the cost of putting our children who are in their formative years in a community where they can learn a healthy and holy lifestyle from other Christian young people and teachers is worth the sacrifice. The salvation of your children, and not just their professional education, would be their eternal inheritance and is the ultimate goal of every Christian parent. To open more opportunities, the university offers scholarships for academic achievers, for children of denominational employees, and work scholarship plans for the financially limited. It may take longer if one works while studying, but a committed person can get a quality Adventist education at AUP. Financial challenges can be overcome for those who make their faith in God the main basis for their choices. Even in the time of the COVID-19 pandemic, Christian education from AUP is still the best option. Online learning is available in all courses. Even chapel period and worship services are available online. Guidance counselors still connect to students even when they are not on campus. With the pandemic, the mental health of students all over the world is intentionally addressed. And for those who still want to benefit from a face-to-face learning community, the university still offers living inside the campus a good choice while taking online classes. Choose a better future for your children or for yourself. Not just for the next few years, but by God's grace, even for an eternity. Study at AUP. All right, are we all back? We shall have two valuable speakers who will give us valuable lessons on how we can make a change with our vote.
Okay, let's continue to our next speakers. They are none other than students from the Adventist University of the Philippines. Chelly Hillis is a student leader and Dean's Lister undertaking the Bachelor of Arts major in history. With her is Shine Nunez, another student leader from the same program. Shine was in the Supreme Student Government of Los Baños National High School as a COMELEC commissioner from 2013 to 2015, then as COMELEC chairperson from 2015 to 2017. Meanwhile, Chelly was the secretary of Samahan ng mga Aaral ng Kasaysayan. Together, they'll give us tips to effectively exercise the right to suffrage. Let's give a warm welcome to Ms. Chelly Hillis and Ms. Shine Nunez.
Oh, we can hear you.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Are you seeing my screen right now?
Yes.
All right,
Yes,
thank
yes,
you.
it's clear.
Thanks. Thank you so much for responding. So, good day, everyone. Hope you all are doing great today. I'd like to extend my gratitude to each and everyone who participated in the webinar. And I hope we had a healthy discussion on how to effectively exercise the right to suffrage. Firstly, uh,
The lecture
firstly,
topic
let
will be
me
divided into two parts. The first
let
part
me
will be
introduce
led
my.
and discussed by Miss Kelly.
Mhm. Yep. And
And
go ahead, Shine.
okay. And Miss Sally Hilis is the current Secretary General. Second slide, please. The current Secretary General of the Association of the Students of History, or in Filipino, we say the Samahan ng mga mag-aaral ng kasaysayan from the same university. She was also the managing editor of their public school, which is called the Brook, during academic year 2015 to 2016. She's a consistent Dean's Lister of the same university, and she was also part of student journalism and won fifth place and was a regional qualifier of the Cavite province during the Division School's press conference 2012. And she is here to present us on how we can exercise our right, our suffragist right, by lecturing and informing each of us about how electoral fraud happens and how we can guard ourselves from being victims of fraudulent abuse.
All right. Thank you for
Give
that
our
one.
hand.
Thank you for that introduction. So let's jot down what are the types of electoral fraud that are happening in the Philippines as well in other countries. But we will be focusing on the locality. First, we have vote buying. It is the committing of an opponent by promising the potential voters of the opposing candidate, such as money, promotions, and other inducements in favor of one's vote. It is also called as positive inducements, as it was in analogy to the carrot and stick principle. You are rewarding the actions of these voters in exchange of their vote. Next is the flying votes. Due to the lack of proper documentation of the voters, especially during the time when we are not yet automated, we are relying on the manual voting and what do you call that? By checking the ballot boxes manually or manually jotting down their names. So it is a its occurrence is comprised of illegal voters that are actually failed to change their registration details. Okay. But then, thanks to the innovation of the technology, we have now our PCOS machines or the precinct count optical scanners. So whenever the vote is not valid or it is committed fraudulently, it is very easy for the Commission on Elections or any electoral bodies to detect what was happening, right? And also, this is a tricky fraud scheme because it can be done intentionally or unintentionally. Intentionally meaning you are paid, probably paid by, let's say, an opposing candidate, and you are actually committing with your own awareness. While accidentally, um, in terms of failing to update your registration details. Example, you have moved from one place to another, but the district was not yet in the jurisdiction. It was still a red flag and will fall on flying votes. Next is the disenfranchisement of qualified voters. It is an act of discouragement of the potential voter from the opposing candidate, or worse, the manipulation of the voters list through an ostensibly legal exclusion from the proceedings in the court. Okay, this is a very special kind of fraud because most of us are unawarely committing this one. First, we are being swayed with other peers that you should not vote. Nothing will change. Or what's the essence of voting when it will when the candidates or the list of candidates are not yet qualified. So you are hesitant to cast your vote. But we are in the luckier we're in the luckier spectrum because we are not we are more of a qualified voters. Just to differentiate what was qualified to the disqualified voters, we are not undocumented, such as the indigenous groups. If we know the Rohingyas, which are currently persecuted in Myanmar, they do not have the right to vote because they are undocumented. And they do not have the tangible materials such as birth certificates, legal documents that should be presented to be registered. Next is the displaced. It is very relevant as of now because of the siege in the center of Afghanistan. Most of the people there are being displaced. They are seeking asylums in different countries. So their right, supposed to be right, was being compromised with this kind of disqualification. And lastly, most of us are not marginalized poor. What do you mean by that? We are not poor enough to not to think of our rights. So it is just common sense that why would we, with the right conscience, with the right thinking, we have the right education as well, and we still do not cast our votes, even though we are not on the marginalized poor. We are able to think of ourselves, and we are able to decide for ourselves. So, in a sense, there's a study that developed countries are producing more voter turnouts. Means to say that more people are voting there. So there's a correlation that their country is getting richer because of that. Next is we are not unable. We are able-bodied, as what Ate Josie have said earlier. Ang boto ng isang pilay ay katumbas lang ng boto ng isang buong tao. We are not on the minorities. For example, in India, there is a significant minority population of Muslims there who are discouraged to take their votes because of their religion. Going back to the questions earlier. And the gender of interest. Women are not yet voters in the Philippines for the records until 1935. So that kind of innovation from the society, we should take advantage of that. And lastly, in the Philippines as well, we are allowing political parties. So in countries such as Oman, in Saudi Arabia, and some secluded countries such as North Korea, though they are participating in elections, but they do not have the freedom to choose what kind of political party or what kind of system do they want to be in with. And with that kind of disenfranchisement, if you know if you're a qualified voter, why do you think you are being stopped in registering to vote? Also, in addition, we have a term suffragette. You can check the movie as well, but it is a term for particularly the women who are seeking their rights. So, yep. Okay. Next is the election-related violence. During my campus journalism years, I have actually written about the Maguindanao massacre, and was published in my in our gazette. And just to connect it with, it is a systematic and premeditated act aimed at monopolizing electoral victories through various coercive, meaning by force, and would mean infringement of liberty or freedom manifested by fear and threat infliction. This one is actually called negative inducements. Instead of rewarding them, they are threatening them with their rights. And as a person, you might be get alarmed with that kind of threat. And one example of that is the Maguindanao massacre, wherein that was only the filing of candidacy, not yet the election, but journalists and even the family of Bangunda Datu was massacred during that time, just because of political interest. Right. So let's move on with ballot rigging. It is a fraudulent practices such as stuffing the ballot boxes with pre-filled ballots, tampering or worse, the destroying of ballots, the registered ballots, or the ballots that was casted the day on the election day. It was also the misreading of ballots during the manual voting, and ballot snatching and switching. All right. So one example of that is the Hello Garci tape, wherein the alleged president during that time was checking her constituents how was the turn of the election. So it's very sketchy, and letting these people win is not insults the intelligence of the people. Next is the falsification of votes. It is usually endemic in the administration levels because of the certification of canvassing and the statement of votes. There are some tweaks that was recorded that they are manipulating the election returns. As what Stalin have quoted, it's not important who vote, but who counts the vote. But still, we as part of the electoral process, even the vote counters or the, the COMELEC, or not the COMELEC, but the one who counted the vote should practice integrity as well. And it falls down to electoral fraud. And lastly, we have the registration of non-qualified voters. Again, just to reiterate what was the qualification of voters, 15, at least 15 on SK elections and 18 on local and national elections. No, not in prison, and a Filipino citizen. So as simple as that. And many people, many youth are qualified with this one. But we go to that extent that even the non-qualified voters, just for the candidate in interest, are letting them win or manipulating them to win. It's very dirty. Yeah. Next. Yep, just like what I've yeah. Okay. As part of our legal framework on the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights after the World War II, we have the right to take part in government or elect someone in government. In 1976, it was also mandated there and fortified the framework of our right during the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And lastly, the 1987 Constitution of the Philippines, Article 5, Section 1. Let me reiterate some of the similar sections that was present in these three constitutions. Everyone has the right to take part in the government of his country, directly or freely chosen representatives. The right to equal access to public service in his country, and the will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of the government. Next, in our local legal framework, we have the Omnibus Election Code of 1985. And on Article 22, Section 261, it was discussed there the sanctions and the different types of fraud that we should not be actually committing. It was actually introduced by our late Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago, particularly on the Senate number 1945. He elaborated on her explanatory note the qualifications and disqualifications on the end of the voters and what are the proper consequences with that. Right. Right. So just remember these 3 R's. Refuse to participate in electoral fraud, no matter how promising the bribe would be. 500 pesos, 1,000 pesos, you can earn that in a day, but the 6 years or more term of the fraudulent candidate, it would cost you more than that. Next is report fraudulent practices. Don't be afraid if you have witnessed at least vote buying, very prominent during the election day. Like on the outside of the schools, they are handling you 500 pesos on the envelopes. Never hesitate to report that, since you are safeguarded by the law. Finally, we should register and vote. If you do not vote, somebody might vote for you. And as part of the deal, whether you like it or not, you are part of the system. Right. So let's move forward with the types of voting with that we can use or we can utilize as an effective voter, as discussed by our speaker, Shine. Let me just introduce her a bit. Yeah. She is a our student here as well in Adventist University of the Philippines, majoring in history. He had her philosophy major as well during last year on the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. She was a COMELEC chairperson on their Supreme Student Government on Los Baños National High School from January 15 to May 2017. And she was awarded Best in Social Sciences at the Laguna State Polytechnic University Senior High School Academic Track. And she was also a District Adventist Youth President during her term on 2015 to 2016 at Makiling View District, Laguna. So with a very strong credentials, let's give it up for Ms. Shine Rolnes. Shine, take it away.
Thank you, Shelly. First, I am here to discuss the types of votes that we can actually do during the time of election. The types of voting, former slide. Ayan. Types of voting here. Well, now that we have secured our knowledge of how we can vote and why do we need to vote, there are 6 major types of voting that I am here to present to each and every one of us. Next slide. I would like to present it in a form of a set, or here you could see that 2 types of voting, absentee voting and traditional voting, are inside the box, such that out of the phrase thinking outside of the box, we have 4 other types of votes that we can cast on the election day or practice as we involve ourselves in the electoral process. So there are troll votes, invalid votes, protest votes, and blank votes, which allow me to explain each of them by presenting examples of how these are done. Next slide, please. The 2 conventional votes that a lot of us have been doing already, especially our elderly. First is the traditional vote, plurality voting, a single non-transferable vote, and the simplest form of correct ballot voting. And then absentee voting or absent voting often applies to OFWs or people who would be absent on the day of election, on the election proper. So during the absentee voting, the government allows certain personnel who may apply to vote in advance of the election proper that will be happening on the day, on a certain day in the nation. Next slide. With traditional voting, what we usually do is what's instructed by the government, which is regularly, if we are using the PCOS or VCM machine, the automated vote counters, we would be shading certain circles. And then during barangay elections, sometimes we would be offered 1/4 pieces of paper and we would write the names of candidates whom we trust and we would entrust our votes to. Next slide. The next form of conventional voting is absentee voting. And local absentee voting is eligible for government officials, police personnel, AFP members, and members of the media who will be keeping peace and who will be serving on the day of the election proper. But also, absentee voting is highly popular, and the largest chunk of absentee voters are our, so to say, overseas heroes, as we call them now, since 2016, are our OFWs. Well, despite being abroad And despite not being in the territorial limits of the nation, which has sovereignty and which respects the people's rights, these people are still legally Filipinos and have a right and duty to serve the country, which in turn, this nation that serves them as part of the social contract, these citizens have the moral and legal obligation to vote. Next slide, please. And interestingly enough, we have 4 forms of unconventional vote, which may or may not be exclusive to one another. Which, when I said may or may not be exclusive to one another, a protest vote can also be a blank vote, an invalid vote, a blank vote, a troll vote, a protest vote, and so on and so forth. They can all be one of each at the same time. A protest vote is something that expresses a political sentiment in your ballot. And then a blank vote is literally just putting your name, your information as a voter, and inserting a null vote for every candidate, or not exactly not voting for anyone. And then the third unconventional vote is the invalid vote. Here, your ballot will be rejected due to answering or shading or filling it out due to the method that you have applied. An invalid ballot or an invalid vote could also become something that had been drawn on, something that was torn, or something that was damaged, such that the machine or the written vote cannot be rendered readable. Fourth is our troll vote. It is merely voting to annoy another party or merely voting just to sabotage the results. Well, somehow the term trolling has become popular because of internet people having their sort of unhealthy fun and making fun in the internet, which actually derives it and got more popular during the age of the internet. Next slide, please. Why do unconventional votes happen? I have list down 5 major reasons why unconventional votes happen. People may feel political alienation towards their current existing electoral system. And then discontent may also become a pervading and major reason why unconventional voting happens, because people do not feel like their government still does its job, such that they wouldn't even care about the sanctity of the election proper. The third most important factor as to why unconventional voting happens, and also something that we can all act upon, is illiteracy. While we are privileged enough to be studying, to be in universities, to be able to read and write, there's still a number of the population that may or may not be able to decently read or write, and furthermore, comprehend or complexly skim what a politician is trying to tell them, such that unconventional votes may happen, and such that ballots with incomplete names or inappropriately filled ballots could be stemming from illiteracy. And there could also be a form of disgust similar to popular discontent, is that, well, no matter if they vote or not, as Tagalogs or Filipinos would say, luto naman ng election, luto naman ng laban. So no matter what I do, the game has already been determined. It's some sort of predestined game plan that, oh, these guys will win because they paid someone to make their votes high. Parang ganun. And then, the worst of all reason of why and how unconventional votes can happen is electoral sabotage. Electoral sabotage can stem from many reasons, such as a coup, national discontent, or just another political person trying to win the election. Next slide, please. Now, to further understand our concept of non-conventional vote, here's a form of troll voting, or somehow a form of trolling the elections just for the fun of it, or just because we don't believe in the elections anymore, when all people sitting on the government offices are corrupt and can't be trusted anymore. Let's just start trusting fictional characters. So in Ukraine, in Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, this became a popular news article during 2014 elections, where Darth Vader, a man named Darth Vader, who probably still standing anonymous up till now, of the Internet Party is a political party in Ukraine, well, filed his right to vote, filed his right for public office in their parliament as a lawmaker. Well, it was furthermore approved, and during that time, Darth Vader won. He lost, but then he still had quite a substantial number of voters, around 14,000. Yeah. Next slide, please. Black voting. If there are Latinos here existing, I think they know it. From Colombia, in the political constitution of Colombia, voto en blanco or blank voting is legal and is actually merited by the law and respected by the nation itself. Here, blank voting is just filling out your name and your voters information, or VIN, voters information number, and just submitting a blank ballot. It is mainly expressing a form of distrust, or just because you can't choose any trustworthy candidate. And in Colombia, if that happens, if there's a majority of blank votes for a certain position, the election will be repeated once more, depending on the nature of the election. And new parties, or until a new incumbent officer comes along, a voto en blanco shall ensue. This gives the protest vote a new way to express dissent. It gives voter a new way of expressing how they could actually, from the research paper of Dr. Molly Cohen, he says that sometimes it's not just the vote that votes for someone that matters, but rather a vote that's not conventional or that's not valid that matters. Such this case, voting blankly in the majority expresses the fact that you can't trust anyone anymore and we have to look for new candidates. I feel like a lot of Filipinos nowadays are having this kind of sentiment as well. Next slide, please. Invalid voting. Invalid voting is something that happens when the ballot, the electoral ballot on the election proper is wrongly marked, such that the intention could be either illiteracy or failure to comprehend and follow the instructions. In the first picture, we can see that it instructs that only one candidate should be voted by putting a cross in the box next to it. But then the first picture shows that only one box was left blank, which merits his or her ballot as invalid. If it's invalid, therefore that vote no longer counts anymore. And then the picture beside it is something a bit more complicated, such that every section of the ballot has words written on it on the form. Like we could liken its nature as something that's expressing a political dissent. Again, an invalid vote may still become a protest vote. Next slide, please. And finally, protest voting, which again, all mentioned forms of voting can be forms of protest voting according to the intention of the voter. In this Ukrainian ballot, which was posted in a Ukrainian news site, the words written with a cat drawn beside it means boycott the election. Because it was during this time that people in Ukraine were protesting against the Russian takeover of Crimea and the growing dictatorship of their figurehead leader. So finally, now that we have seen all the other forms of voting that we can practice, whether traditional or non-traditional. Next slide. It all boils down to this one question: to vote or not to vote. And as we have learned now, we can vote in any other way that we wish. Because at the end of every electoral counting proper, there's a chance that the media will also be reporting the number of invalid votes, the number of vote abstainees, and that nothingness in that not counted vote for a certain politician or a certain political party still means something. If statisticians, if social scientists would analyze it, it still says something about society now. So this question, whether to vote or not to vote, what say you? Next slide, please. Always and always, whether unconventional, whether legal or not, it is always to be voting. That should be our choice. Just because it is the right thing and it is the obligation of every citizen qualified to vote, qualified to be registered to vote and cast his vote for the government, according to the Omnibus Election Code of the Philippines, Article 1, Section 4, such that the social contract will be fulfilled by the citizens and the state, that we will become representatives of our interests for the state, because the state is to protect the interests of the people. The people in turn should make their voices be heard to the state, because we are a republic, a democratic republic.
So we are asking a call to action this movement. Firstly, we should be informed of the issues and platforms and the personalities of these political candidates. Do they have a platform? Do they have a voice that do they represent a voice? And do they have the if they do not have the money, do they have the ability to govern the called Kaban ng Bayan? And also we should set specific guidelines in choosing our government leaders, at least in our own standard. How do you want to be governed? No matter what social status you have, no matter what educational background you've got, it is an obligation to, participate in the electoral process. Conduct and participate in public debates so that you know the pulse of the people and the platforms or the takes of these political candidates. We have actually the Filipinos debates, senatorial debates, even grand rallies in our barangays, and even online forums as we utilize in the course of the pandemic. And yep, just to for final reminders, we should practice vigilance and integrity, at least in ourselves, and the counting of the canvassing of votes as well, and support the government. We should be able to support the government. On how to support the government? Obeying laws, paying taxes, and being a good citizen of the Philippines. In that way, we can help the government, aside from warding off those dysfunctional members of the society. Okay. Right. Okay, it's actually discussion. We are opening the discussion on the participants who wants to share their insights. We actually have 3 questions, And we just want to know what are your takes and your sense in these questions. So, proceed na ba tayo, Shine? Okay.
Sige po.
Let me just paste it on the chat. Okay. Let me stop my share. Right?
Okay. We
So
can
we will-
announce this one.
Yep,
Or do you have something else to say?
we will be teka lang po. We will be needing your help, sir, to
Facilitate. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
first
once more, we are encouraging participation from the audience. If you have any questions for our two lovely speakers, please raise your hand through Zoom so they can call on you. You may also share your own tips and tricks to effectively exercise the right to suffrage, and you can post them either on chat or message us anywhere. We can accommodate you.
we have our first question posted. What do you think are the loopholes in the Philippine electoral system that you can see or you can observe? Anyone from the group? Well, actually, we have a question.
Which one will you address first? The one posted in the chat or other question?
What do you think, Shine?
Let's accommodate the audience's question first.
All right.
Okay, here it is. Is black, this should be block, no? Is block voting considered in the Philippines? Does a specific number of votes or percentage of votes from the population call for a renomination of candidates? Or what protocol has been put to respond to the votes? Or is it merely a statement? Did you get that? It's a series of questions. But I think the main point there is whether it is allowed in the Philippines to accommodate block voting.
It's actually
Yes. First off, our Omnibus Election Code addresses block voting, and philosophic and integrity, we do not support block voting legally because it undermines the individual rights of every human being, such that our declarations of human rights are addressing human privacy, personal space. While we practice block voting, we cannot really say that we are undermining their right to think for themselves. Okay? So, while we know, it's a widely known fact naman na certain organizations practice block voting, or maybe even families and groups of people, friends. It's happening, yes, but then by paper, and if it is the law, we are advised to follow it just because it preserves order in society. Well, we do not promote and cater block voting po, because you yourself are a human being created after the image of God, who has the power and will to think and decide for yourself. So, sa pereyaude, dare to think. That's
There
my
it
answer.
is. There it is. Thank you very much for that question.
Oh,
Miss Karen?
may follow-up question para sa
There's another question here from the chat for Shine. People are saying that our system is broken. What can you say about that? Is it the system or the individual?
If you're asking for my opinion, I personally believe that it's the system. Kasi no matter, if you have noticed, and if we have lived long enough to see history happen, one person from our call pointed out nga na, at first I voted the person. The first 2 years, first 3 years, they're really good. They're very faithful to service. After a few more years, they're becoming a trapo or a traditional politician, whereas, ayun na, they're becoming corrupt more and more. And there's this term among politicians and people in public service na kinain na ng sistema, or they've been conquered by the system, this pervading evil system. So yes, I personally believe that the Constitution and the electoral process needs a wide range of reform in order to fix what's happening here. But it's also a combination of many factors among the values of Filipinos, our literacy level, and how padrino system actually pervades.
All right. Thank you for
I hope
that,
I
Miss
answered your
Shine.
question.
All right.
Yes, there's one point here being raised by one of the students. I guess this is a suggestion, more on like a solution to the problem. If I were allowed to read, it says the electoral system of the Philippines should have centralized electronic voting system where all precincts come in to vote, wherein people come in to cast their
Who made
votes
the system?
electronically, and it should be registered in the centralized electronic database system for speedy result and accuracy, eliminating the manual counting and inputting of votes. I think this is done already in the US. More advanced countries have this kind of method, but here in the Philippines, we are trying the best so far that we have. It's the Smartmatic method, using that kind. But still, it is much better than the previous one, the manual. I also tried that one before, and the turnout of the election is very, very slow. But even with the more advanced experience here, it's still slow. So what can you say about this?
One concern about that is, geographically speaking, we are apart from each other. So through automation, I think, with the internet, the condition of the internet connection here in the Philippines, it will be a very much challenging innovation. But as much as we are secured in our connectivity, at least we have a um, internet connection that is very much reliable. And also the frauds. Someone might hack the system since it's centralized. It's the singularity of the database is very much prone. So there are a lot of challenges yet. But yeah, it's a very good take on how we could improve and fasten our elections. As we have experienced in the 2019, there are some backlogs, which supposed to be we should be pronouncing the winners tomorrow, or at least, or in the day, but we are very much delayed at least a week. So the longer the election, the more fraudulent practices might happen. Yun, sir.
Okay, thank you for that one. And any comment from other teachers? Because my input also in that is, even though we have a more advanced and secure kind of election, it may lessen, but some people, if they really want to do something bad, they always find a way, you know. I think the education of every voter is one of the important steps, and this activity that we are doing is one very important factor, no? Pag educated naman tayo, yung sistema na yan ay susunod na lang din yan, no? Kahit sa US no? Gumagamit na sila ng advanced na method, pero may question pa rin na pwedeng i-manipulate, di ba? So,
Yep.
but I think that's a good suggestion, okay?
That's
Another one, Miss Karen.
Okay, let's have another question from Jethro Suliano. To those who are unsure of who to vote for, would it be more responsible to not vote at all or make an uneducated or uninformed choice?
Shine.
Yes, as I have discussed, you may actually practice blank voting in that case. Kasi if you vote for someone na parang nanguhula sa exam, or like you're guessing answers in an exam proper, since there are choices, so to say, it's hard to actually say whether you're voting the right person or not. What if, let's say, we are actually having a dictator running in the list of electoral candidates, and that dictator could have won only one vote short, and your vote would have been that one that guessed that wrong person. So after 5 years or so, we're suffering under a dictatorship just because you guessed your vote. So think of that hypothetically. So you would rather not vote, diba, than vote for the wrong person. But it's always your choice. this is one place that our choices cannot be dictated by anyone else. It is our sacred right. Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
All right. So here there are two other questions. I think we can combine them. I don't know which of this one. Okay. It says, who made the system, ma'am? And is democracy overrated or still suitable in our voting system?
What do you,
Given
if
the
I
dom-
may return the question, what do you mean by dominant irresponsibilities? Yung failures of the government ba?
Mm,
Yeah, could be. Voters, yan. Irresponsibilities of voters. Mhm.
Hmm.
my Mhm.
Would you like to answer, Ate Sally?
Just a very suggestive answer. Not voting at all is as worse as voting uneducatedly. So if you are asking if democracy is overrated, I don't think so. At least we are bound with natural laws, and we are people. There will be always a usurper or a power that will arouse, and we do not want that. We do not have we have resorted into sorry, it's raining. We have resorted into a egalitarian system. It's not working at, at least. So the only thing that we should do is to make this work, to make the system work, and by that, through voting. Yeah.
All right. There's a one follow-up question and then maybe one last one before we proceed to another speaker. We have one last important speaker to listen to. Okay, it says here, I think this is a follow-up, the same question earlier. Centralized, eliminating. Okay, it says, Ma'am Shine, specifically for Ma'am Shine, as a historian, can you answer my question? The previous question given by Jan Ismail Tengson is, who made the system, ma'am? So he was referring to the
Okay.
system.
So first, may dalawang system na sinasuggest yung question mo. First is our constitutional system or our legal framework overall in the Philippines. And then second is the electoral system. So first, yung legal framework or the constitution, it happened during 1986 revolution. Remember, EDSA, ganyan. And after EDSA happened and they were victorious with the coup, there's a bunch of people, I think 12 people, who sat down to write this constitution. So they are the ones who answer that question. And if I may enumerate them, it includes, wait lang. Jumping to the next question muna, generally speaking, the electoral system was many times, because he or she, no, sorry. The electoral system is something that has been overwritten, scratched by our legislative branch or the Senate and the Congress many times. And since they're the ones who make the laws, sila po yung nagawa ng system. But overall, if we're talking about the all-pervading system of traditional politicians who are kurakot, you could still blame that on the electoral system, which has many loopholes. We wanted to actually open discussion questions for the audience as well. And one of that questions is to ask, what are the loopholes that you see in the Philippine government and how can we improve that? We're trying to address that question as well sa inyo, my dear audience, para ma-answer natin kung not on who to throw the blame, but rather on how we can fix the system. So who made the system? First, yung mga tao na sumulat ng Constitution, the people who wrote and drafted the Constitution, and then the people who weren't in the government, especially in the legislative section. I hope I answered your question. Thank you for asking.
Okay. So we still have one question here. Is it a factor, or is there a factor that the Filipino would rather accept a candidate rather than see his or her credentials? Like, for example, because that person is a celebrity or a rich person. I think we know who is this person referring to by the one who asked the question.
If I may joke, his match just finished earlier ba?
No?
Oh, same thing
Yeah.
because her husband died. Also a relevant rhetorical question which may answer the question. I think alam natin yung sagot eh. We all know the answer locally speaking. And the problem is that over and over sinasabi to every time may information drive that we have to create more informed voters. We have to be more critical, not just because they're famous, not just because they're good at punching people, not just because they have a wide set of shoes. Ayan. But rather be critical on their skill set nga. So the question po is why or whether or not they're choosing it. I think we all know the answer.
Yeah.
So my dear fellow students, our call is that let's open our eyes. Being political does not mean we're disobeying God or we're being revolutionary. Not immediately ganon. It's not about two sides of the spectrum, okay? Being political means we're involving ourselves for change somehow in our own little way.
Yeah. So we really have to look at their qualifications, their credentials, their capacity to lead, not just because they are the public figure there and um, without exercising our critical analysis in choosing I think the speakers have addressed this one last question, I think. Oh, are you single? These are follow-up jokes. Yeah. Can we say that we are educated enough in voting? If you look at our country today, which a lot of people, I guess, turned their backs to the president. Okay, that's the question there.
Okay.
What do you mean by turning backs on the president? You
Sounds like
mean
at first they voted for the president, and then sometime later on they changed already their mind, as if they're having regrets why they voted that person. Does that equate educated voters from the start?
A lecture I attended from Dr. Malabed, who is a professor of political science in another university, showed a set of data from SWS or Social Weather System, a survey siya. Noong 2016, last 2016, 40% of Duterte supporters were from the ABC class, or the people who are middle upper class na educated. And then now, when referring to the turning back stage, a lot of people are saying that DDS or Duterte diehard supporters are bobo, sorry for the words, or uneducated, ganyan, and then they have a script. Addressing that, I think it lies on the human nature of being fickle, or fickle in shallow terms. Pabago-bago ng isip, they keep changing their mind. Because sometimes we think that we're thinking, but we're actually being dragged by our emotional impulses. Whether educated or not, whether you have a master's degree, you have a PhD, or you are just a high school kid, high school graduate, I think it doesn't always depend on the diploma. It depends on the practice of virtues and critical thinking skills. And I think every human being has the right and the ability to do that. So we are educated enough if we let ourselves be.
Very well said. Okay, Miss Speaker. I think that's it. That's it. I think, Miss Karen, we are done with the two, and we are getting ready for the next one.
Our last speaker, yes.
Okay, we truly would like to listen some more to the inputs of our speaker, but I think it's about time to listen to our new one. Our last topic for today will be conducted by our special guest of honor. I hope our next speaker is already there, getting ready. Okay, our speaker, the special guest of honor, is Honorable Vincent Edward Caceres. Honorable Vincent is a master of public administration management from Flinders University of South Australia, and is now working in the Commission on Elections as a Municipal Election Officer 3. Today, he will talk about the Philippine electoral process. Let's all give a warm welcome to Honorable Vincent Edward Caceres. Sir, you may now have the floor.
Sir, I think he was disconnected.
Okay, okay. Disconnected. So we have to wait a little while, ladies and gentlemen, and we are happy to inform you that we have reached a number of 500 attendees earlier. In fact, we could have exceeded if our Zoom account is able to accommodate more than 500, and up to this time we are still less than 500 but 400 plus strong attendees, and we are hoping that this can be a very wonderful afternoon, the whole day, the whole afternoon of learning from different speakers since we started this afternoon.
Okay, I think it will be Sir Jesse Songkayawon who will present the PowerPoint of of Honorable Caceres.
Sir, maybe can we wait for a while po?
Yeah, I think he can just take over once he will be able to get in.
Mm-hmm.
Doc Jess, you want me to share the PowerPoint? Doc? Okay. Okay, sir.
Sir Asser, please unmute him.
Sorry, sir.
Sir Asser.
Yeah, he can unmute po. Co-host po siya, ma'am. You can unmute, Doc. You cannot? Oh, sorry po. All right, please. May I request my co-host to unmute Doc Jess?
Right po.
Yeah, I think we're good now. Because of the connection problem, our supposed speaker is encountering right now. He occasionally gets disconnected. Okay? He tried his best. So he just asked me to share with you the message that he has prepared. So let me request Sir Asser to show the slide presentation. The topic is entitled Electoral Process in the Philippines. Our supposed speaker is the Municipal COMELEC Officer 3 of Pulilio Island, Quezon. Okay, next slide. The Philippines is still a functioning democracy. Okay. There are, I think, a lot of discussions have already been done in relation to this. Okay, there are a lot of things to be fixed. Okay, although the country's politics continues to be characterized as volatile. Obviously, we have a very weak and fragmented party system. We have party system in as provided for in the Constitution, okay, but it is not functioning the way it is supposed to function. Okay, party system is not doing what it is supposed to do. People are not even aware of the platforms of these political parties in the country. Instead, voters are still on the personality side of the politicians. You can ask Manny Pacquiao about it. Itong mga politiko na dating magkaaway, pero kapag malapit ng eleksyon ay magkasama na sa isang partido. We call this as political butterflies. Okay? They don't have loyalty to the party. They don't have. They don't stick to their political platforms. What they are after is just to secure their winning in the election. So they would like to affiliate with those parties or those personalities whom they think they can have an advantage of. Hawak kamay, kapag tinataas ang mga kamay nila, okay. Yeah, that's usually what we see during elections. But after the election, political butterfly culture is very, very much apparent. Okay, next slide. The political party means nothing. It's patronage that matters. Usual naman ito sa Pilipinas, but it has become the norm during the last 4 or 5 administrations. Sa labanan ng mga politiko, they don't adhere to the principles and ideals of their political parties. Kumbaga, kanya-kanyang diskarte, ang mahalaga ay manalo at makakuha ng posisyon sa gobyerno. Yung iba ay sasayaw-sayaw pa upang makauto ng mga botante, di ba? What kind of dance? There were a lot of senators, a lot of politicians who got famous with the dance moves, that they showed during political campaigning. Okay, next slide. This loyalty transcends across political parties. Hindi tulad sa ibang bansa, not like in other countries, such as in the US, that when you are a Republican, then you've got to stick, as a Republican for life. In the Philippines, sa unang election, PDP laban, then next you transfer to Lakas, then later transfer to Liberal Party. The more, the better, or the more, the merrier, they say. Political turncoatism is the shifting of party affiliation, which is mainly rooted on political advantages rather than on conviction. At yan magaling ang mga politikong Pilipino. Okay. Whichever party is on the advantage, then the politicians flock there. When Duterte's party, Duterte won in the election, in the last election, okay, many politicians from other parties transferred to PDP laban. Okay, next slide, please. There are a number of electoral reforms that have been thought of and really discussed and deliberated in the House of Representatives, which were designed primarily to curtail the movement of politicians across party lines. Of course, kung yung batas na pinag-usapan ay tungkol rin sa inyo at makaka-apekto sa inyo. So according to Mr. Caceres, the reason why bills in the Congress are not approved, it's because perhaps those bills are not in line with the interest of the politicians. Okay, next slide. The party chairman, yung party chairman tinanggal dahil nakikita yung big boss na threat siya sa political aspiration. Okay, so the party chairman maybe like in the case of Manny Pacquiao, the party chairman of PDP Laban, he was removed. Okay, and some people are thinking that there is political maneuvering behind that. It's a disgrace. We see, nakikita nyo, mga bata kayo na pwede pala ang ganon. Young people see that, okay, and it's not something that is good to emulate. In other words, okay, if politicians are doing that, okay, then young people, when they become politicians too, they can also do the same. That's the implication. And to think someday, yung ilang sa inyo ay magiging politiko din. Some of you will also become politicians. These politicians are clowns and they set despicable precedents. Okay. Next slide. Political patronage is defined as the allocation of favors or rewards, such as public office. Okay. If I win in the election, I am going to give you a job. I am going to hire you, okay, in my office. Jobs, contracts. I'm going to give you a business contract. Your construction company will be given a project. Subsidies or other valued benefits by a patron, usually an elected official, to a client, usually a donor or campaign contributor. In return for the client service, such as voting for the patron or providing money for electoral campaigning. Ito, ayon sa ilang mga eksperto, ang labis na nagpapahirap sa ating bansa at pati na rin sa COMELEC. Okay? So these practices, fraudulent practices of our politicians is one of the reasons why our country is slowly growing economically and also socially. Okay, next slide. The ills brought about by political patronage include vote buying, corruption, political dynasties, which hinder attempts by the COMELEC to foster fair and credible elections. So as mentioned, politicians are like clowns. So that also reduces the credibility of election in the Philippines. Kami ina-admit namin sa COMELEC, napakahirap i-dissuade ang mga tao from accepting money during elections. At, it is said that it is very hard for people in the COMELEC to dissuade people from accepting money during elections. And it is very hard to track down those people that are buying votes. But it is a fact that vote buying is very, very, common in our country. Vote buyers are now even using technology to buy votes, GCash, Paymaya, etc. Okay, so they are also updated. Okay, next slide. Under the traditional utang na loob system, utang na loob means debt of gratitude. system of patronage or obligation. Okay, politicians are often described as KBL. And then Sir Torres knows about KBL. Kasal, libing, kasal, binyag, and living. The politicians are all present there. And their act of giving some money, some gifts during those events, is turning voters as patrons because of our culture of utang na loob. Expect money or jobs in return for their political support. In many cases, politicians' performance was based on dole-outs. Okay? Just like you ask people, why are they voting, somebody, or some politicians, and they will tell you that because they're helping other people. Okay, a senator is helping. The work of a senator is not giving gifts, or giving rewards, giving money. The work of a senator is to legislate laws, and so with the members of the lower house. Okay, but because of our negative culture of patronage system, so this one is pervading, in our system. Not on programs or policies. Filipinos still are not that mature to focus on what the programs or policies, not only the individual politician, okay, but the political parties can offer. They don't care to know and read because politicians themselves are not sincere about their platforms of government or programs or policies. Okay, Philippine concepts about debt repayment and kinship responsibilities. Kinship in Filipino, kamag-anak, because he or she is related to a politician by blood. Okay, then he is obligated to give his support for his vote for that person. Plays a major role in how political networks are set up and run. Okay. Next slide. So traditional politicians know this very well, and they take advantage of this particular culture we have in the Philippines. If you would like to win, then you go with the flow. You also have your campaign strategy in line with the culture of the people. Hindi lang naman sa Pilipinas, kahit sa ibang bansa, meron din. Pero, okay, I think Honorable Caceres has already gotten in. Okay,
I will stop share or just please unmute. Wait lang po. Yeah, may I request my co-host to please unmute?
Yeah. You maybe unmute Honorable Caceres, and I can now exit.
What's the name in here?
Do I need to stop share, sir, and request him to?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay po.
What name is he using?
May we request Honorable Caceres to please turn on your camera po, sir, so that we can. Yeah, I saw him. Yes, sir. You are now a co-host po. May I request the co-host also to please rename Honorable Caceres. Right. You want to share screen po, or I will share screen, sir, and then please direct me what slide number po.
Hi, hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon po.
Hi, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to apologize. Unang-una po, napakahina talaga ng internet namin. Dito kami sa Pulilio Island sa Quezon. I've been trying to get in since 1:30 this afternoon.
We can request Honorable Caceres. Okay lang po sir na i-off na lang po yung camera. Yung camera niyo po while you are talking po. Para po mas...
And the barangay elections. And kaya gusto namin yes, hello?
Sir,
Hi,
I will do the share screen po, and then if it is okay sir, you can just turn off the camera po para po yung bandwidth mas focus po sana.
Okay, okay.
All right sir. Thank you so much sir. Salamat po.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Okay.
Mahirap makalusot, no?
Na ano siya sir?
Parang na-disconnect ulit.
Hello. Talagang challenging po yung internet connection ni Honorable Caceres.
Kahit audio na lang sana. Audio na lang, no? Para
Yes sir,
less-
it
less
can help.
bandwidth.
Opo. To our viewers, audience, yan po, talaga nasa isla po kasi siya.
Yeah, it's actually interesting to listen from someone from Comelec as well. Hope he will be able to get in.
Yes, Doc Jess?
We have to continue, I think, just to save the day.
Okay pa.
Okay.
So sir, I will go doon sa na-discussion
Yeah,
po.
yeah.
So please.
In behalf of Mr. Caceres, I also apologize for the problem.
Yeah, I think dito po
Okay.
sir. This one.
Yeah.
Tapos na po kayo rito. Next slide
Yeah,
na po.
okay, next slide. Yeah, and next slide after that.
Yes sir, this is the next slide po.
Okay, so hindi lang naman sa Pilipinas, okay, not only in the Philippines but in other countries there are also problems, no, in relation to political systems. But in the Philippines, the way Mr. Caceres sees it, it is more extreme. I'm talking about movie stars and celebrities and on how they dominate Philippine elections. So it's kind of frustrating. I think the same sentiments was also shared by Shine and Chelly a while ago. Personalities are more important than parties in Philippine politics. Movie stars and other celebrities have enjoyed considerable success. In addition, several prominent families play a disproportionate role in politics. So we can name few families in the Philippines that are very, very dominant in our political system. Okay, next slide. Ang ating bansa is our country is also known for its rough and tumble political scene. Politicians are routinely killed, and sometimes they even do the killing themselves during election period. Okay, so we always hear of violence-related crimes. I mean, election-related crimes during the election period. The filing of certificates of candidacy for next year's national and local elections will begin on October 1 until October 8. And then, simula na ng patayan. I hope not, okay? But yeah, it's an observation by many people, okay, that violence always goes with elections in the Philippines. Okay, next slide. Oh, hala, tama na ang pasakal. Let's go straight to elections in the Philippines. Elections in the Philippines are of several types. The president, vice president, and the senators are elected for a 6-year term, while the members of the House of Representatives, governors, vice governors, members of the Sangguniang Panlalawigan, provincial board members, mayors, vice mayors, members of the Sangguniang Panglungsod, members of the Sangguniang Bayan, barangay officials, and the members of the Sangguniang Kabataan Youth Councilors are elected to serve for a 3-year term. I think this was also emphasized by Ms. Manansala previously. Okay, next slide. We have multi-party system with numerous parties in which no party normally has a chance of gaining power alone, and parties must work together with each other to form a coalition government. So we have this also culture of coalition among political parties. And we, in the Commission on Elections, is responsible for running the elections. Next slide. Under the Constitution, elections for the members of Congress and local positions, except barangay officials, occur every second Monday of every third year after May 1992. And presidential and vice presidential elections occur every second Monday of May every sixth year after May 1992. All elected officials, except those at the barangay level, start and end their terms of office on June 30, June of the election year. Monday, this day, sa araw na ito, magaganap ang isang election. So that is every Monday. Okay. Next slide. Who are qualified to vote? Okay. Every citizen 18 years old or above on election day, resident of the Philippines for at least a year and for at least 6 months in the place where she or he is registered, and who is not otherwise disqualified by law may vote. Okay, so there are those that are disqualified, okay, especially those that have been convicted of a crime. to actually vote, a citizen has to register. Voter registration is about to end on September 30, 2021. Those who are not registered do not appear on the voters list and are ineligible to vote despite being otherwise qualified to do so. COMELEC has just declined a request to extend the registration period. Okay, this year. Next slide. Yeah, I think that's the
Yes,
last
sir.
one.
That's the last
Okay.
one po.
So thank you for listening. Honorable Caceres would like to be with us this afternoon, but because of some problems, especially in relation to internet connection, which is beyond his control, he is not able to do so. So thank you very much for listening.
So shall we still have a question and answer? Maybe a few questions that Sir Jess can also address. Miss Karen?
Okay. Just before po, no, I just want to comment po. I think the first slide was kind of out of line. It's out of line to include the conflict and shade the fight people have for their lives in an attempt to encourage our own people. So, ayun lang po. Wala lang. Napansin ko lang po about the comment about Afghanistan. Ayun po. So let's open the floor to questions. Please raise your hands through Zoom so our speaker may call on you to unmute your mic and then ask your question. Please ask questions related to the topic.
I think there's one question here. It says here, good afternoon, sir. May I ask methods the COMELEC is using in order to pinpoint and address the disgraceful electoral processes of the running politician? Yan.
So running here is referring to incumbent. Is that what
I
the
think
question implies?
Candidates siguro ito, sir, no? They're about to run for an office. Methods the COMELEC is using in order to pinpoint and address the disgraceful electoral processes of the running politician.
Oh, well, of course, the COMELEC can disqualify. If there is a petition filed in the COMELEC for disqualification, okay, and if the COMELEC finds, yeah, I think Mr. Honorable Caceres is here. Okay, maybe he can address that question.
May I repeat the question for the hearing of the of Honorable Caceres, sir? If you can hear me, can you pick up my audio, sir? Honorable Caceres, can you pick up my audio from your end? There is a question here that I think you can address, but I need to confirm if he can hear me. Yeah, okay.
Naglalag talaga, sir.
Oo.
Okay, so as far as I know, the work of COMELEC starts upon the receiving of the certificate of candidacy, okay, and ends when these candidates have already been proclaimed. Okay, so they can do only as much as disqualifying the candidates if, for example, in the case of Noysan's candidates, okay, if it can be proven that the candidates that have filed their certificate of candidacy are Noysan's, then they can be disqualified. Okay, or if the requirements are not met, like the residency requirement, the age requirement, okay, Ano pa? I think mentioned by also the previous speaker. So if those requirements are not met, no, so they can be disqualified.
All right, thank you, sir. I think there's one long question here referring still to a suggestion or an idea regarding the excuse me, the centralized electronic voting system. The question is this possible for implementation? I think this can only be answered by the people in the COMELEC if
That's
there is a
correct.
new approach.
Uh,
All right. The next one is this is a concern. The link says that the evaluation form is no longer accepting responses, so there must be something wrong with the link that we are requesting our attendees to fill out. Okay. Anyway, another question here, Miss Karen. Would you like to read the next one
Yes
from
po, it's
Daniel
from
Granado?
Daniel Granado. Good afternoon. General question lang po. One common thing I noticed about these running candidates is that they are often good at introducing themselves with flowery words and letting people know their contributions. Intro people kuno. And as time passes, they become somewhat incompetent. It's hard to choose when inconsistency happens. Can you give points to consider in choosing people you want to vote? For example, how do you determine these people are sincere to their duties?
yeah, of course, politicians are always like that. Okay, it's just like when you are courting a girl. No, you are going to use the best strategy in the world in order to win. No, the hand of that girl. But in the case of politicians, they also do the same. Of course, they are after winning the election. Okay, and they're going to do their best. But on our end, no, as voters, of course, we are reminded to be responsible. We have to go beyond their promises, okay, and look into their qualifications and their track records. Okay, when they say that they are going to, let's say there is that one aspiring presidential candidate, he is going to eradicate homelessness in the Philippines. So try to ask yourself, is that possible? Okay, don't simply believe in promises. Somebody also promised, if I win, I am going to eradicate graft and corruption. That is easier said than done. Another candidate said, if I win, I am going to eliminate poverty. That is also impossible. You cannot do that within a short period of time. Okay, poverty is a very complicated problem to solve. But because of immaturity of some voters, if not many, they simply believe, no, in the promises of our politicians. I am, for example, there is that famous candidate in the past, no, who would say, I am pro-masses. How would you know that he is pro-masses? How would you know that he is on the side of the masses, on the side of poor people? Okay, I can tell you anything I can say, but that doesn't mean that you are going to believe in everything that I am telling you. That's because we are supposed to be analytical, no, and we're supposed to be responsible voters.
Okay, thank you, sir, for addressing that concern and for answering the question. Maybe one follow-up question to that, if I may add it from my point of view. If our students would like to know more in depth, well-informed students for who are they going to elect, where can they go? Where can they source out informations that are reliable, reputable information about these people and what to look for them, what to look for, so that they can choose really the best. Now, usually, aside from the debates that organized by different media, that is one very good venue. But are there any other means for our attendees, for us voters, to know the real deal with our candidates?
Okay, well. I think when candidates decide, no, to run for any government positions, no, that means that their credentials, their profile is transparent or must be transparent. Okay, there shouldn't be anything to hide from the people because you are a public image or a public personality. So whenever we ask for some information about candidates, these are readily available for our perusal.
All right. Thank you, sir. Miss Karen, there's one question here by Yuka Kajiyama.
Let me read the question. It says, who do you personally think should be more responsible, the older politicians or the new generation of politicians?
Oh, yeah. Maybe that's obvious, that's why these webinars invited young people, because young people can still easily be easily be persuade and transform in as far as their perspective, their knowledge is concerned. Old politicians should also be responsible, but like what Shine has said a while ago, it's really very hard to break the culture, break the system, to change the system. They are already accustomed to it. So we just need to be patient. Things, I'm very positive, just like what I have mentioned a while ago. Things are changing, if not very fast as we expect it to be. Things are getting better. Our political system is much better than the political system during the time of Marcos, during the time of the Americans. Though there was an election during the time of the Americans, but it was not a fair and free election. There was also an election during the time of the Japanese, but it was not a fair and free election. So it should be this event, voters' education should be a way to open the minds, especially of young people, students like you are, to be advocates for change, so that this system, though it's very hard to change, we can somehow contribute towards the reformation of our political system.
All right. I think we have a hand raised by Bridget Acuben. This must be Sir Acuben who would like to speak up, sir. We would like to hear from you. What is your point of view about the topic we're talking about? Sir Acuben, you are now recognized. You may have the floor.
Yes, sir. You can unmute na po.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to give additional explanation about the question that are we better today? The young politicians today are better than the politicians of the past? Okay, my answer there is that much better now. Although, of course, there are so many defects of our political system here in the Philippines. But if only you know what was going on in the 1960s, I want to tell you, thousands were being killed every election time. I know the home province of Miss Dr. Songkayawan there. The Javier in the Pacificador, I tell you. Okay? I know that, Dr. Songkayawan. In Masbate, the Espinosas and the Fernandezes. In my home province in the north, Pozon and the Almasans there. In Ilocosor, I tell you this Kirsologos there. Okay, much better today, because without that massacre there in Mindanao, sometime I think that is 2011, when was that? Time of Pinoy, of the massacre there, that there were so many journalists that were involved. Okay, without that, I tell you, that is the only incident now. I think it not even more than 50 individuals are being killed during election nowadays. But during my childhood days, I tell you, ambush here, ambush there, everywhere in the Philippines, the Dimapur of Mindanao, that was. There are many improvement now. Young people, there are so many improvement nowadays in the politics here in the Philippines. Well, with that question about the political dynasty, well, there is a provision there in the Constitution about anti-dynasty law. But up to now, it's not yet addressed upon by the congressman because, of course, if you were a congressman, you are also grooming your children to become politicians someday. So, never mind about that anti-dynasty law provided in the Constitution. Okay, that's all what I can say.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for giving your input about the conditions in the Philippines. All right. Do we still have other questions? Otherwise, then this could be the end of our meeting for this afternoon. We truly want to thank our speakers for today. Thank you for the knowledge you have imparted to us, and surely we will take these lessons and use them to vote wisely when election day comes. To award our certificates, let us call on Jeroni Theti Panawan. If you are there, Jeroni, take your time now.
Good afternoon, everyone. I wish all of you have learned a lot of things in our webinar today. I would like to thank you and appreciate all our speakers today. Firstly, may I read the citation in the certificate. Republic of Philippines, Commission on Higher Education, Adventist University of the Philippines, College of Art and Humanities, History Department in collaborating with Development Communication Department. This certificate of appreciation are proudly presented to Dr. Jess Songkayawon with the topic Basic of Philippine Politics, Ms. Josie Manansala with the topic Philippine Political Landscape, Ms. Shandril Nunez and Asamta Kolihilis with the topic How to Effectively Exercise the Right to Suffrage. And lastly, Honorable Vincent Eduard Caceres in the topic Philippine Electoral Process, for imparting their valuable insight. The participant of Kabilang Voters Education webinar held virtually via Zoom communications, Facebook and YouTube live stream, given on this 22nd day of August, year of the Lord 2021. Again, thank you so much and mabuhay.
Thank you, Jeroni. Let us hear a response from our audience. Kier Mahusay from Nagaview Adventist College. Is the response of Kier Mahusay from Nagaview Adventist College ready?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Wait lang po. Actually, it's prepared video.
And college and academy student. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Nagaview Adventist College and College and Academy Student Council, would like to thank you for inviting us and be part of this webinar. Malaking tulong po talaga ito sa amin, especially sa mga hindi pa botante ng mga estudyante ng Nagaview. It is an eye-opener for us na we register not to para makatanggap ng pera from the politicians, but to serve our country and be a responsible citizen. And we are looking forward po for another or sa future, sabihin natin na future activity with the AUP and Nagaview. That's all. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you for that remark. Now let's have remarks from Ian Christopher R. Del Moro, the Sangguniang Kabataan President of Polillo, Quezon.
Yes!
Is he around po?
Oh, I think he's not around, so let's move on to because of his internet connection in Quezon. So let's move on to our next part of the program.
All right, I think we will now proceed to the closing prayer, but we would like to thank you all of our audience who attended today, especially to our participating institution, wherever you are, from all over the Philippines. We really, really appreciate you coming. You stayed by until this end. We appreciate your presence with us today. At this time, let us have AUP's History Department Chair, Sir Jesse Songkayawon, to give us the closing remarks.
Okay, so we are really very overwhelmed. Okay, I think it is beyond our expectations to have this many attendees in this webinar. Okay. In behalf of the College of Arts and Humanities, the History Department, the Development Communication Department, I would like to thank especially those who have been involved in the preparation and implementation of this webinar. To Chelly, Shine, Karen, Clyde, Donna, and other students who actively help in materializing this webinar. Thank you very much. And also to my fellow teachers in the College of Arts and Humanities, Sir Torres, okay, Doc Batray, okay, and Sir Acuben, the rest of the faculty in the College of Arts and Humanities. Thank you very much for your support and your active participation in our webinar. To our resource speakers, of course, Miss Manansala, our very own Shine and Chelly, Honorable Vincent Caceres, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge to our young people this afternoon. I believe that these pieces of wisdom that you have shared will help them a lot as they grow politically, socially, and even spiritually. To all of you who have participated, thank you for being a part of today's event and for staying until the end of the webinar. May God bless us all, and may the wisdom that we have gained this afternoon will help us as we continue to work our way to become more effective citizens of our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jess Songkayawon, the Department Chair of the History Department. To officially close our event, let us have Elaine J. Ines to lead us in our closing prayer. Please don't leave the Zoom meeting yet because we will have our picture taking after the prayer for documentation.
Shall we
Huh?
pray? Our most precious and loving Heavenly Father, Lord, we praise and thank you, Lord, for the success of this meeting. And Lord, as we depart, may you continue to guide and protect us as always. And this we ask in the loving name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. We'll now be turning off our Facebook and YouTube Live, but please stay for our picture taking and please turn on your cameras so that our picture can be taken by Miss Donna Tilos.